There are several boxes of tabletop role-playing games on the table. The boy started playing this interactive game as a student, and somehow got addicted to it. He felt like he was just hooked on this interactive game. Every time he was unlucky, because the enemy side always successfully attacked, the guy was screaming with anger. Taking a card in his hand, the guy yelled that he didn't have much mana left, and he didn't want to waste the leftovers. However, depending on the number, destruction was possible, so he decided to splurge and use a fireball. His opponent laughed at him, for he never gave up. However, he lost. The guy replied that he has his own definite goal that he is going for. The blonde-haired guy, while rolling the dice in his hand, asked what he wants to be. The guy clenched his fist and shouted that he wished to be a hero who would save the world from all the troubles. The guy shouted that 23 points of damage had been dealt to all the heroes. The opponent mumbled that this was excellent. However, who would have thought that this could become a reality? And he would no longer be attracted to adventure. Who would have thought that at this age, he would stop being attracted to adventure? The guy had grown up. He was already 42 years old. His occupation was a company employee. His appearance and abilities were nothing special. Overhearing the conversation of his colleagues, who were already married, he sighed heavily, because he had no chance of marriage either. His hobby was TRPG, at least it used to be, for since he started working, his hands had never once touched his favorite game. The man was a typical working man who could barely make it to his apartment, as fatigue consumed him. And one day, such a typical person like him ended, barely having time to enter the apartment, the man collapsed on the floor. And up to that moment, he thought that he would be able to live at least 20 more years. The man was amazed that it was so easy to die, but he did not understand where he was. He could move in empty space, and then the man assumed that he had become an observer. Suddenly someone said that he would go to a world beyond his reach. The man was frightened as he could hear a voice in his head. He kept saying that he wished he could be transported to another world. The voice said that the man was only here for that. The man began to frighteningly ask what would happen after he was transported to another world. The voice asked the man to show his physical information for further activities in the other world. The worker realized that there were no questions or answers here. The voice said it was advisable to adapt to the fantasy world of sword and magic. The man immediately remembered that he had been obsessed with TRPG his entire life. He had spent 7 years in DB doing adventures to save the world, and had even developed to the maximum level of a hero whose name was the Great Wizard Geomargils. Suddenly a voice mumbled that it was performing a search. The man didn't realize what was going on. The voice said that based on the rule book in his room, and additional notes on the materials, to recreate the physical and mental capabilities, as well as the personal belongings of the hero Geomargils. The man covered his mouth in shock. Falling to his knees, the man mumbled that this was the most shameful death. The voice mumbled that the appearance was not changed so as not to cause psychological harm, and a moment later it said that the creation of Geomargils was complete. Suddenly the man found himself in Geomargils' costume. He noticed that the body had become incredibly light. Grabbing a mirror, the man verified that his face really hadn't changed one bit. The voice asked the man if there were any disturbances of consciousness or memory. He replied that everything was fine. The man realized that he still had the memory of 42 years of life, but it would be difficult to get used to the settings of Geomargils. Taking a better look at himself, the man realized that he had indeed become a TRPG character. Then he remembered that Geo was a maximum 36th level wizard, and this wasn't just a game, but a real universe. It was something he could do himself. The voice suddenly said that this character was rather unconventional, and wondered if he could even be released into the world. At this point, the man was stunned. The man angrily asked what he was doing all this for. The voice asked back if he thought he had an ulterior motive and told him that after the transference, there was no interference or guidance from that side. The voice said that from now on he would live within the laws of that world and would be able to demonstrate his physical abilities and knowledge. The man asked if he was sure if he would use this power to destroy that other world. The voice replied that it didn't matter. The man thought to himself. He then exhaled, smiled, and decided that he would consider it a passing of his life. The voice said that in that case, it was going to take him to another world, the continent of Cedia. The man screamed he wasn't ready for that. Everything was flickering and shimmering in front of the man's eyes. He didn't understand at all what was happening to him. Suddenly opening his eyes, he saw the bars in front of him, and then looking at his hands, he saw that he was shackled. The man realized that he was in prison. He reflected on the fact that this start of a new life was promising enough. The man looked up at the grate in the ceiling and realized that it was daytime outside. He wondered if he should act right now, but he doubted it, because his equipment was no good. The man was incredibly angry that immediately, after being transported to another world, he had no bag filled with items, no staff, no special robe with protective abilities. He was not prepared for this turn of events. The man realized that no bag meant no spell book. He reflected that even though he was a wizard, without a spell book even unprepared, he would not be able to use any type of magic. Usually in board games like DD, spells need to be prepared first, studied, written in a book, and so on. Exhaling heavily, the man wondered if he could prepare a spell. After a short period of time, the man exclaimed that he had succeeded. The spell was prepared, and now it could be used. There was a problem though. He didn't know how to use it. The man knew that Geo, meaning himself, could use a total of 11 spells, 9 for each level from the 1st to the 9th, but each spell could only be used once a day. Geo decided that to use magic, he needed to go into his mind for 10 seconds, but he didn't know which to choose. Geo didn't know if he should choose jailbreak or defense. After thinking for a bit, the man decided that he needed a good defense more at the moment. Exhaling, the man shouted to open the gate of the magic path. At the same moment, in the reflection of the floor, he saw himself in his gear. All this time, Geo did not open his eyes, because it is easier to use magic. When he opened his eyes, he was surprised. After opening his eyes, the man saw that he was dressed in his good equipment. He realized that it looked like he had managed to get into the inner world of his mind, and decided that he needed to act further. The man shouted a summoning incarnation. Tall doors appeared in front of him. Opening them, there were many steps leading down in front of him. Each step denoted a level. Geo decided that all he had to do was to reach the desired level. Taking the first step, he found himself on the second level. Taking another step, he was already on the fourth. Reaching the 9th level, the man exclaimed with joy, because he had found the archive of the Great Wizard spell books. When he entered the room, he saw the table standing in a row. On each of them, there was a book of spells of the Great Wizard. Geo knew that if the book was on stands, it meant that the magic was charged. Lighting up each table of books, he finally found what he was looking for, a book of invulnerability magic spells. Opening the book, the man immediately began to read it page by page, making preparations. From now on, his body would be immune to all attacks with ordinary weapons, as well as spells of the 3rd level and below. Roughly speaking, he would be surrounded by an invisible barrier. Suddenly, the spell book disappeared from the table, accompanied by a flash of light, and when the man opened his eyes, he saw 2 cubes. It was as if the man had been prepared for this, and was pleased to see the 10-sided cubes. The wizard's rule is to use these dice to determine a numerical value between 1 and 100. If 100 is rolled, it would be what is called a fatal failure, and he would no longer be able to activate spells. The man was a bit frustrated, as this rule was not previously in the DB. And most likely it's an established local rule to make the game more intense. Rolling the dice, the right number fell out. The man was very lucky, so he got invulnerability. At this moment, Gio opened his eyes in the prison. He felt the protection around him and realized that the spell really worked, although at the same time, he remained defenseless for 10 seconds. Suddenly, the brigands approached the bars and started threatening Gio. The man was surprised to see them. He knew they were bipeds, but they could still kill. The man took into account that he should be careful. One of the robbers got into his cage and started threatening him. Gio tried to be polite, but the bandit didn't care. He hit the man in the face with his fist. After the blow, the bandit said he shouldn't be angry. Gio slumped to the floor in pain, but he was more concerned about why he had been hit, since he had activated his invulnerability earlier. The bandits grabbed the man and began to pull him out of the cage. Gio realized that the invulnerability did not protect him from melee attacks. As the man was dragged down the prison corridor, he noticed that a young girl was sitting in the next cell. One of the brigands looked at the innocent girl and said that when he was done with Gio, he would enjoy her body. The girl gasped for air fearfully. It was incredibly painful for Gio to hear such words towards a young, frightened girl. The man was thrown to his knees in front of their den. Gio noticed that there were an insane amount of brigands in the area. Suddenly, the whole crowd of bandits began to converge on Gio. They called him a false magician and tauntingly offered him to escape from here with magic. Gio looked at them with a twisted face and wondered why they called him a false magician. Suddenly, an old voice shouted for everyone to stop making noise, and an old man came out of the den and said he would take care of the interrogation. Gio was furious, for this old man named Jegal had his staff of the great wizard in his hand. The man was asked who he was. The old man waved the staff and asked Gio where he got this amazing staff. The man replied that his name was Gio Margils, and he was a very ordinary wizard. As soon as the old man heard the word wizard, immediately holding the staff to him shouted that he was a liar. The old man shouted that Gio was a liar, for he had no magical power, which meant that he was not a magician. The man looked at the foolish Jegal in amazement. Gio asked angrily in his head if he was sure he had no magical power. The old man was greatly annoyed by Joe's silence, and striking him with his staff, he shouted at him not to be silent. Gio collapsed to the ground without moving. The bandit started to move his legs and asked him what was wrong with him, why he was acting like a fool. The old man looked at the staff and said that he didn't feel any magic power from it either, but he was 100% sure that it was a magic tool. The old man swung the staff, and a moment later, a terrifying bolt of lightning struck in front of Gio, making a hole in the stale earth. The bandits were amazed, for they had not seen such magic before. Gio remembered that there was a prepared lightning spell on the staff, and it would activate with magical power. The old man forced the man to tell about the staff. The old man was very curious about this magic instrument without magic power, and asked if it was made by wise men. Gio said he would not tell him anything. Then the old man got angry and asked the man if he was underestimating him. The old man aimed an ice arrow at Joe's shoulder. The man was furious at the pain. The old man chuckled at the man and asked how real magic tasted to him. At that moment, Joe's only thought was that invulnerability didn't work again. He wondered if there was a difference between magic and sorcery. Gritting his teeth in pain, Gio realized he didn't want to die. Suddenly, a voice from his head asked Gio what he was going to do next. Gio raised his head and wondered what he was going to do next. The man immediately started remembering stories from the game he had been playing his whole life, and realized that he had gone through similar problems many times before. The man started to act. He remembered the spell that would stop Jegal and scare the brigands. so he immediately opened the gate of the magic path. Meanwhile, the old man was talking madly about showing him his magic again. At this point, Geo was rolling dice for a spell that would turn the target into a lifeless creature. Back in the real world, Geo shouted petrification, and the spell began to take effect. The old man laughed at first. However, after a second, he felt himself becoming stone. As soon as the bandits saw Jagle become a stone, they decided to kill Geo immediately. But when one of them swung his sword at the man, the blow failed. The other bandit laughed and said to aim more accurately. However, when that guy struck directly at Joe's head, the blow failed again. All the bandits panicked as the weapon didn't even scratch Joe's body. Meanwhile, Jagle became finally stone. The brigands wondered how Geo had done it. The man looked angrily at the brigands around him and decided it was time to continue. Geo was preparing to summon a squad of ogres. This spell summons 6 ogres. The squad is created from nothing and is under his control, but only 3 times. Geo looked at the frightened bandits with a smile, for behind him stood 6 dark ogre demons. The bandits were in a wild panic, for there were 6 huge ogres in front of them. They thought they were demons and Geo was their ally. The bandits thought that if they all attacked together, they could kill them because they were much bigger. Geo was glad that the bandits were not afraid to fight. It would be an interesting sight. Dozens of brigands started running at the huge ogres. Meanwhile, Geo ordered the ogres to chase away all the brigands. One of the ogres started killing the bandits, and then Geo yelled that the bandits should be chased away, not killed. Then the ogres started shouting at the bandits in animal voices and waving their huge arms. One of the bandits decided that he could kill the ogre if he launched an arrow from his bow at him. It hit the monster in the chest, and the ogre did not like it very much. The fearsome monster started screaming at the pitiful bandits even louder, and they began to run away without looking back. The bandits were fleeing from the den in droves. Geo smiled, for the ogres had managed to chase all the bandits out of the lair. He was surprised that on the continent of Cedia, the ogres were called dark demons. The man decided not to fill his head with unnecessary thoughts and ordered the ogres to gather. Geo gave out tasks for the ogres. 3 were to survey the area, the other 2 were to investigate and eliminate the dangers inside, and the last one was to guard him. Geo asked the ogre to break the shackles, and then decided to proceed with his health. The boy activated full healing, and his shoulder wound instantly healed. Geo was glad that the spell worked. Then he said that he would go scouting too, since he needed to explore the ruins first. Geo and the ogre walked up to the huge doors. There was a broken door lying nearby. The man said that there might be someone underneath it, so they should be careful. After a while, Geo and his assistant walked around the basement, the first floor, and the second floor. While on the third floor, Geo noticed that the study led by the ogre was more comfortable than one could imagine. MDB, the wizard's magic is very strong, but the warrior has an advantage in close combat. There is only one recovery spell above all else. Recovery is the priest's privilege, and unlocking and disarming traps is the thief's job. At first, the ogre knocked on the door, which didn't work. Then Geo asked if he could open it, and if he couldn't, he could just break it. The second the ogre broke the door with his hand. Geo was glad they didn't even need a thief. The guys walked through the broken doors and found themselves in a living space. There was a bed, a dresser, a table, and a chair. Suddenly, Geo saw something that surprised him. Geo saw his endless bag on the floor of the room, and immediately grabbed onto it. The man immediately started rummaging through the bag to find the spell book. Geo took the spell book out of his bag and hugged her, telling her she was like his own. Looking to the side, the man found his robe and boots. Geo looked out the window and saw a narrow road in the distance. He wondered if he could follow it to the village. As he was about to leave, Gio thought about something he had forgotten to do, and then he remembered the young girl in the cage. Meanwhile, the girl was sitting there thinking about Gio. She thought he had been killed by bandits since he hadn't returned. The girl let out a tear at the fact that she would be the next one to be killed. Suddenly, Gio grabbed the bars and asked if she was okay. The girl screamed frightened. Gio tried to explain to her that he wasn't a thug at all before she screamed to keep the demon away from her. Gio turned around and saw the ogre and realized that the girl was scared of his assistant. Gio asked the ogre to wait for him outside. The man then began to tell the girl that it was his attendant summoned by the spell. The girl said that if he summoned a dark demon, then he was one of those bad guys. Gio didn't know what to say. He just remembered that in this world dark demons are like ogres. Gio told the girl that he was just an ordinary wizard. She replied that she had never heard of them before. The man thought about the difference between magic and sorcery, but decided not to fill his head with these thoughts for the time being. Gio smiled and said that if he was one of the bad guys, they wouldn't have put him in jail. The girl said it could have been because of the riot. Suddenly, Gio thought about the fact that she might have trusted him if he didn't look like a 40-year-old man, and the real Gio was a handsome man with silver hair. Then Gio remembered that he had his powers, and if he could curry favor with his charms, the conversation would go smoothly too. Suddenly, Gio started banging his head against the bars. The girl started anxiously asking what he was doing. Gio did not stop banging his head against the bars. He was screaming some nonsense like a madman. The girl asked him to stop. The man was beating so hard that blood flowed from his forehead. He said sadly that it hit him in the eye. The girl suddenly felt sorry for Gio. Gio was bleeding a lot from his head, and the girl handed him her snow-white handkerchief to put pressure on the wound. Gio took the handkerchief and thanked the girl for her help. Then suddenly Gio remembered that he had an infinity bag with him. The man took out 2 shot glasses from the infinity bag. The girl thought it was sake. Gio replied that it was not sake, but a healing potion for healing wounds. The girl asked him to drink it quickly. The man wondered why she was offering to drink the potion, and then realized she was talking about the wound on his forehead. He handed her the potion and said she needed it more. But the girl waved her head and said she was fine and didn't need the potion. Gio said that in that case, he would drink the potion and show her the full effect. The man drank the healing potion, and taking her handkerchief off her wound, showed her that the wound was completely healed. The girl was surprised. Holding out a second healing potion to her, the man told her to take it. The girl started to say that it was too expensive, especially since she had only twisted her leg a bit. Gio asked her to take the potion as an apology for scaring her, especially later when he would be taking her home. It would be a bit hard with a sore leg, especially if she didn't need his help. The girl still agreed and held out her hands for the potion. Taking it, she immediately began to drink all the contents. Immediately afterward, the girl hopped on her twisted leg and felt no pain. Gio was glad that the potion worked and then said that he hoped she would trust him at least a little. The girl replied that as long as she believed that he could help her. Gio said then with the magic key spell, the hand that touched the key could open and close doors. The man opened the door to her from the cage. The girl came out of her confinement, bowed before him and told him that her name was Mora. She was the daughter of the merchant Ildo of Luris, and then apologized to Gio for what she had said earlier. Gio introduced himself to her as well, and told her that he was very pleased to meet her. Mora replied that it was mutual. Gio then asked the girl not to worry. He would just have the ogres secure the perimeter. Mora cried out fearfully, wondering if he thought that then she would definitely think he was one of the dark demons. Gio scratched the back of his head and embarrassedly said that if it made her feel better, fine. He just didn't want to make enemies. so he took the advice. Geo decided to use a spell that he would use to dispel all magic within a 3-meter radius. The ogre next to the man disappeared. Geo told the girl that the other monsters should also disappear. It was getting dark, and he suggested Mora to go to the main tower. The girl asked if he really could do all this with magic. The man replied that it was the ogres and the usual magic. They went up to the main tower, sat down at the table, and Geo began to tell her that he was from the distant country of Zythias. And why he had come here, he did not remember at all. Perhaps he had been brought here by so-called magic, and while he was unconscious, he had been captured by bandits. The girl didn't understand anything the man said, but she answered as if she did. Geo realized that after this explanation, he seemed suspicious himself. Zythias is the name of the country used in the DB campaign. He decided that he had to keep lying to make it work, and told Mora that it might sound strange to her, but he swore that he would never hurt anyone. Geo said that he's not a mage like Jagle at all, and she just needed to believe it. The girl stares at Geo in silence, and then says she believes him. Geo said he was very happy about that, and thanked her. Mora said that, to be honest, she didn't understand the first part at all, but she was convinced that he was not a bad mage. Geo said with a smile that if she said so, that was enough. Mora started pouring tea into her cup, and said that Geo is weird. He's a mage, and he has a last name, and he's also very kind to her. Geo replied that in his country being nice to women is the norm, and having a last name doesn't mean you're a great person. Mora said that in Luris, where she lives, only nobles are allowed to have a family name, and only a nobleman or a commoner from a very wealthy family can become a mage. Geo remarked that this was very similar to his country, and wondered if the class system was still alive in that world. The man then inquired about Mora's captivity. The girl suddenly lowered her eyes to the floor, and swallowed her saliva forcefully. Everything was happening in the city of Larissa. It is a city-state, a member of the Alliance of Rias, an association of small states. In the vicinity of the city is located a huge lake, the Lake of Ruse. Mora's father Ildo, a merchant living in that city, was leading a trade caravan. And one day, the merchant caravan was attacked by bandits. The bandits were not satisfied with the simple robbery of money and goods. They demanded 500 gold coins in exchange for Mora, and then took her to the fortress. Mora said that now her father was probably asking for help from the Knights of the Order in the village of Urbe, which was not far from the road. Geo said that in that case, they would go to that village tomorrow. Mora happily said that she was counting on him. Geo was alone in his room. He said that today had been an incredible day. He thought he had died, but was reborn in another world. He was immediately beaten by bandits, but there is a limit to everything. Then the man noticed that the moon had not changed. The man sat down on the table and began to think about what to do when the bandits returned, how to get to the village. And the most important question was how he was going to live now. Then he thought that the night was long, so he would think about it all over a cup of tea brewed by Mora. Geo fell asleep at the table, and woke up to Mora yelling at him to wake up quickly. She said that if he didn't get ready quickly, the sun would go down. The man was frustrated, for he never came up with anything. Mora walked in a huff and said that their goal was the village, and it was time to go. Geo asked the girl what kind of sack she was carrying. Mora replied that it was stolen goods from her father, and she would very much like to return at least some of it to her father. Geo was glad to be the first to find her clothes. The girl picked up the sack and said that they should go. Geo asked her to wait. He would make a means of transportation for them. Geo had prepared a spell in advance. Mora wanted to say something to the man, but he had already read the ghost horse spell, and at the same moment a strong horse appeared in front of them. Geo asked, Isn't it hard to walk on the mountain roads? It would be better to use this horse to reach the village as soon as possible. The ghost horse depends on the level of the wizard. The higher the level, the cooler its abilities. At its highest level, it can run through air, water, and even through walls. Geo then decided that he needed to create an invisible carrier for Mora's luggage. The girl was shocked that her bag started floating in the air. Along with Mora's luggage floated a stone statue of the robber boss. Geo explained that this was to retrieve his staff later. Mora said she had to get back soon and let her father know she was safe, and she feared for the rest of the merchandise. Geo said she was right, as the brigands might come back, so he would take countermeasures and recited the reconstruction spell. Geo created a huge mountain right under the main tower. So now no one will be able to get in there for a while. Geo apologized to Mora for making him wait and ordered the horse to run away on the road. Meanwhile, the bandits were running away from the ogres. The day before, in the city of Yule, Mora's father ran to a knight. The knight recognized the same merchant running towards him. As he ran up, he grabbed hold of the guy and began to tearfully beg him to save his daughter. He explained that they were attacked by bandits, and they took his daughter, and according to rumors, the bandit leader is an outstanding mage. And so he can only ask for help from strong warriors like them. The knights looked at the old man in surprise. The knight replied that he would like to help him, because he is very kind to them, but they have just returned from an adventure, and are not fully equipped, so they cannot give a guarantee that will save his daughter safely. Mora's father said he was willing to get them all the equipment they needed from the store. Then he said that he was willing to give 3,000 gold coins for this task. The knights were shocked, because this is enough to not work and rest for a while. Mora's father said that his daughter's life is at stake. Therefore, he can't help but spare a lot of money for this. The knight said that he understood him, and so they were willing to accept his request. The knight set off. Walking through the forest, the girl from the team said that there were unlikely to be bandits hiding here. The knight thought that if they stayed on the mountain road, they would have already fought the bandits. A good decision turned out to be to choose the beast path. The knights decided that they should make haste. Meanwhile, the terrifying monsters were glaring at them from the forest. The knights began to run very fast. They were being chased by scary monsters that looked like demons. The knight shouted to the others that he had never thought of facing a pack of dark demons. He had underestimated the situation too much. The girl shouted that this was not a good time to regret it. Thanks to the inversion, the knights had 3 seconds to counterattack. The knights started a violent battle with the dark demons. One of the demons grabbed the knight's leg. The other shouted to him that such monsters should be killed in one blow. The knight kicked the dark demon in the face, and it fell to the ground, but it was still alive. Suddenly, a blade flew into that dark demon. It turned out that the blade was thrown by the girl knight. The guy thanked her for saving him. The knight ordered the girl named Clara to hold her position as long as she could. The girl replied that she would do her best. The head knight then ordered everyone else to retreat to the top. Clara looked at the dark demons and did not understand what they were made for. Why such difficulties? Then the girl used magic to launch a chain of fire projectiles. For the demons, it was a deadly weapon. They were burned by fire. Clara smiled contentedly. Clara ran up to Sadas and said that they should go to the fort as soon as possible, because with so many demons in the mountains, no one knows what will happen to the fort. Meanwhile, more dark demons were on their way. The knight shouted that things were bad, for they had a demon giant here. Sedum decided to act with his bow, and shot at the demon giant. Sedum ordered the rest of the knights to keep moving at the same pace. The knight then asked Clara to activate the flame. After doing so, the demon giant burned in the flames. The running night swept up that Clara was on top of her game as always. The girl told Sedum that it was just a temporary measure. The guy said to head to the fort immediately. Suddenly more dark demons appeared from the forest, ripping out trees from the root. Sedum was terrified, for he had never heard that there were so many giant demons in this mountain before. Sedum shouted that he had to run anyway and get out on the mountain path. Clara yelled that she wasn't going to give up in a place like this. It turned out that Gio was getting motion sickness in the sky, so he brought the horse down to the ground. Mora started swearing that he started something without thinking of the consequences. The man thought that flying would be much more fun. However, now they would be moving on the ground. Suddenly, the man heard a strange roar and asked Mora if she heard it. Mora clung to the man fearfully and said that it was the roar of demons. The girl told him that a long time ago, Relis was also attacked by demons. Suddenly, the girl began to beg the man to let her go, for if her father and the others came to rescue her, they might be attacked too. The girl began to cry, thinking that her father might die. Meanwhile, Gio shouted to open the magic gate. The man explained to the girl that this spell also creates a magical shield that protects the target for an hour. Gio stroked the girl's head and said they would go save her father. Their horse was rushing at an unthinkable speed. Gio noticed that the roar was getting closer and closer. The girl noticed the knights running off to the side and told Gio about it. Gio asked the girl if she knew these men. Mora said they were adventurers that her father often asked for escorts from. Mora said that Sedum and the others were running away from these demons. At that moment, Gio saw these demons for the first time. Mora asked Gio to save the adventurers who were in danger. With tears in her eyes, the girl begged the man to defeat these monsters. The guy ordered the girl to call the adventurers here, and he would take care of the demons for now. He shouted that he would handle it himself. Gio ordered the magic gate to open and summoned his incarnation. This spell shoots fire arrows within a radius of 240 meters, creating a fireball, 8 meters in diameter, and with a damage of 22.6. Meanwhile, Mora was calling the adventurers to her. The adventurers shouted what Mora was doing here. Clara said that they should bring her back anyway. Meanwhile, Gio had a difficult process. The total number of dice rolled was 63. Gio launched a fireball at the demons. A huge explosion happened. Gio thought the destructive power was beyond imagination. Mora said she hoped the adventurers were okay. Suddenly, Sedum's voice came up. The guy told Gio that he was awesome and asked if he was a mage. Meanwhile, Mora yelled that she was happy since everyone was alive. The adventurers thanked Gio for his help, but their problems weren't over yet. Sedum explained that they still had a few small demons and one giant left. Gio couldn't understand how that happened. Then the adventurer activated the inversion. Sedum asked to buy him some time. An adventurer named Vajika ran up to Mora. Sedum asked Gio if he could use that magic again. The man replied that if he was talking about the fireball, then it could be used one more time. Sedum drew his bow and said to attack before he saw the giant and the little demons. The monsters appeared on the horizon and Sedum said it was time to act. Gio ordered the magic gate to open. The adventurers didn't understand why the man was stalling. Clara launched fireballs at the demons. Gio thought about the fact that at this distance, his fireball could hit the adventurers, so he needed to act differently. Gio activated a lightning spell. The lightning struck directly at the dark demon giant. Thanks to this spell, Gio destroyed all the monsters and did not injure the adventurers. To save Clara, the man grabbed her hand. Then, forgetting about it, he thought about the fact that this was a spell that was often used in TRPG. Gio smiled and thought about the fact that it looked nasty even though it was magic. Clara looked at the man and asked him to let go of her hand. The man let go of her hand and embarrassedly apologized. The guys reached the mountain trail and decided that they had had enough. Sedum went up to the man and introduced himself and told him about the rest of the team, and they had been asked to rescue Mora. Sedum then asked how come they were together. Gio replied that he had a special case. Sedum asked the man who he really was. Gio introduced himself and said he would explain everything in order. After he explained everything, Clara said it was all too crazy. The girl asked if he was going to use his magic to deal with the bandits, and if he was going to make excuses. Why not do it better? Mora whispered in Joe's ear that Lady Clara is a countess, so she should not be offended. Clara said that it could still be that he is a mage and also a bandit leader, and he also ran away from demons with Mora. Gio replied that his story sounded strange, but they could ask Mora as a witness. The man then pointed to a statue floating in the sky and explained that it was the bandit leader. The adventurers were shocked, not realizing how it was floating in the sky. Sedum said that Gio was a man using a strange power. However, he had helped them, and that was the main thing. Sedum made a bow in front of the man and said he was truly grateful. Sedum said he owed him his life. Clara said she would have to admit that too. Gio was incredibly embarrassed. Gio said that he was only fulfilling Mora's request. The girl explained that Gio was amazing. No matter what, he could use magic. Clara shouted that a magician without magic can't exist. Gio said he too wanted to know if they could see magic power. Gio knew that if he used the analyze spell, he could see magic power. However, the DB he was created from had no such thing as in from this condition for magic. Clara shouted that of course they could see it, and asked if he couldn't even see that. One of the adventurers asked if the others didn't think that magic made the statue float in the air. Clara moved closer to Gio and asked if he could explain this magic. The Jika asked everyone to listen to her. She said that the demons are approaching. After that, everyone tensed up. The guys saw that the demons were coming in a huge crowd like a whole army. The adventurer said that there were small, giants, and even stone demons. Gio was surprised that there were also stone demons. He remembered that he had something handy for such occasions. The man took out a telescopic tube from his bag. With it, he would be able to observe the demons. He looked through the tube and saw what the different dark demons looked like. He saw the biggest demon with a weapon in his hand and realized that it was a stone demon. Gio said that goblins, trolls, and ogres are not very cute. One of the adventurers said that if they are walking through the forest like this, they are probably going to attack Yule village. The adventurers knew that the closest village to Yule, which is to the east. Mora was very scared for her father. One of the guys said that they should go back to the village immediately and warn everyone, while the other guy said that they just wouldn't be able to evacuate everyone in time. He asked if they should not go to the castle of the White Sword to call for help. Then the adventurer said that he was right. After going through the forest, they would split into two groups. Everyone decided that either way they should hurry. Gio thought about what would be the best thing for him to do. The question was not whether he could do it or not. The man did not want to seem rude. However, one would like to ask if he could manage together with them. The man realized that with Joe's strength, they would be able to destroy the herd at the bottom of the valley. However, the intent of the Watcher who had summoned him here was still a mystery. His position as the one who could defeat them might be jeopardized, for it was not uncommon to hear things about forbidden magic. Gio pondered that if the dark demons are legitimate people, as someone who came from another world, his victory over them could lead to more tragedy. Because there is no proof that the demons are really coming to attack the village. Gio was amazed that he was a great mage who had saved the world of DB characters many times, but to think he was a simple man who had been living peacefully for 40 years. Gio was confused, not knowing what he should do now. Suddenly one of the adventurers called him. Gio asked if the demons attacked the village, how much damage would it do? The adventurer said that with that many and the stone demon, they would wipe out everyone. Mora mumbled that her father was in this village. The girl grabbed Joe's hand and began to shake it anxiously. The man replied that everything would be fine. Gio said that he would definitely come up with a solution to the problem. The adventurer asked what he was up to, since he had no magic left after the last battle. Gio took hold of his head and soared above the ground. The adventurers were amazed that the man was floating in the sky. Gio was glad he said the word flight just in case. Now he could follow the herd of demons. Gio told the adventurers that it could be dangerous, so they should evacuate. The man immediately flew to the side. Gio flew into the distance and saw the beginning of the herd. With his new spell, he would create a solid stone wall beneath him that was 15 centimeters thick, 15 meters wide, and 20 meters high. After reciting the spell, in an instant the wall appeared beneath the man. Gio heard the demons begin to scream. They all looked at Gio angrily, wanting him dead. Gio said hello to them. However, in response, he received an arrow that flew straight at his face. However, Gio was lucky because he activated defense and flight magic together. The man was surprised that they knew how to handle a bow, but they had terrible hostility. You can't even talk to them. Arrows flew at the man relentlessly, and he realized that it was simply impossible to get to a dialogue. The man realized that there was no point in trying to negotiate because they weren't human. They just needed to be killed, and that was it. He didn't want the demons to advance further, so he decided to kill them all off. Gio ordered the gates of magic to open, and then ordered Incarnation. Gio wanted to exterminate all those demons at once. He decided to review all his spells, and choose the most suitable one. Gio remembered talking to a fellow TRPG game master about how some attack spells had been added due to the influence of the manga and anime. And as far as he remembered, he and the man had an unwritten agreement about spells. The man was looking for the strongest attack spell. Gio found a spell where 8 meteors fall from a great height. The damage from the meteors is 26 when they collide, in addition to the same amount more when they explode. The man decided to take one last look at the demons he was about to exterminate. Gio activated the 9th level meteor spell. Huge meteors flew straight at the dark demons. An eerie chaos seemed to begin as the meteors collided with the ground. Gio looked at this sight and sighed heavily. He was shocked at the power of this spell. The man was glad that he was able to overpower became. However, he didn't expect it to be so powerful. He thought he had always realized that games and reality were two different things. What he did was as powerful as a nuclear weapon. The man still couldn't believe he had done it. Gio realized that the power of a 36th level mage in this world could be comparable to a nuclear weapon. Meteorites were coming to the place where they were. Someone on their team asked what it was. The commander said that it was definitely from the valley side. The commander said that, indeed, it was him. He thanked God for that. The commander told the stranger that he didn't know what he would do if he couldn't join them. The girl exclaimed, "Greeting, Mr. Gio." Gio replied to Maul that everything would be okay now. The master continued that it was because he had already dealt with the monsters. Everyone's faces changed. The warrior told Gio that he was a mage who had great power. He added that he had realized that from the beginning. Warrior asked Mr. Margles that they probably should have called him that. He said that he didn't come from a family of aristocrats, much less a high-ranking person. He added that he was just an ordinary commoner. Geo smiled. He replied that they could treat and talk to him as normal. The other warrior told Margils what he was talking about. The first warrior said that they couldn't treat a man who could burn so many demons with one blow like that. The other added that he was a great hero after all. Geo thought he just wanted them to stop referring to him as some great magician. Geo realized that he had done something that no ordinary commoner could do. The warrior went on to say that everyone else was immensely grateful to them. He said that it would have been a disaster if so many demons had invaded the village. The commander said that they were curious about him as someone who could defeat the dark demons. He laughed. The commander continued that they didn't want meteorites to fall on their heads. He added that he hoped he was understanding. Geo hesitated for a moment. Geo replied that there was still a lot he didn't know about this world, but doing bad things with magical power. He said that he swore to all of them and this world that he wasn't going to do such a thing. The commander asked that he had a god that he swore to. Geo replied that he didn't know if his god was like their god, but he swore to the Watcher. The commander said that he had never heard of such a god. He continued that he was sure that this god was a good one. The commander added that it was because he thought it was better to use the force to defeat the dark demons. The girl shouted that Mr. Geo was just a great man. The girl continued that he was truly kind. The warrior started laughing. The girl asked that it was Sedum. The warrior answered in the affirmative. He continued that they had no reason not to believe the hero who saved the village. He pointed to Geo. The girl replied that he was right. The commander told Geo that it seemed his watcher had brought him here. He said he was counting on a hero. The commander said they had to get Malu to the village first. The warriors agreed. Geo thought Sedum could have been counted on more. The warriors were on their way. Geo grabbed his horse by the reins. He thought it was obvious there was a low level of civilization here, because the streets were paved with stone. Geo knew that one had to have some basic understanding of this world before coming into contact with so many people in a village. Geo asked the commander if he could tell him about this continent. Sedum replied that it was a rather broad question. Sedum said that to be more specific, what he would like to know. Geo replied with a questioning tone that, for starters, about the countries and their history. The commander was surprised. Sedum said that 2 nights wouldn't be enough to tell him about it, but they could talk about it in camp. Geo asked then for a brief overview. Sedum agreed. He continued that, however, the area where they were now was called Reyes. The commander said that city-states were scattered around Lake Reyes on the continent of Cedia. He continued that these city-states had united into a great power called the Reyes Alliance. Sedum said that the Yule village they were now heading to was one of the forces belonging to the Reyes Alliance. He added that the Order of the Knights of Carbonella was based in the White Sword Castle. Sedum said that there was a dangerous wilderness east of the village of Jul, and at the end of it was a rich foreign country. He added that daredevil traders, adventurers came and went. Geo asked, then, what about other areas, such as the north and southwest? Sedum replied that north of Lake Reyes was the kingdom of Shrindel, the largest state on the continent. He said that there was a large country to the south as well. The commander continued that it was in the midst of a civil war, and he knew little about it. He added that the last was the west. There was the city of Rilis, where he and Mala were from. Sedum said it was the second largest fortified city in the Reyes Alliance. Geo replied that it was clear to him. He thought it was like medieval Europe in an alternate universe. Geo asked what about these demons, what they even were. Sedum fell silent. He replied that it was a complicated question. He scratched the back of his head. The commander said that, for starters, dark demons was a generic term, and there were many types of them, such as small demons, giants, and stone demons. He went on to say that their characteristic was their fecundity, and they created a horde. Sedum said they would appear out of nowhere, build nests, and increase their numbers. He added that they could create a large horde called a legion. Sedum said that, however, when the number of nests were many, giving rise to more than one legion, it was called an onslaught. He continued that it was called the greatest scourge of mankind. Geo said that was how vile they could be. Sedum replied that there was another feature besides that. Sedum continued that against humans, they had a pronounced desire to destroy them. The commander said that these demons were considered the only enemies not only in Reyes, but in other areas as well. He continued that when they appeared, even if there was a war going on, they had to interrupt it and stop them. Sedum added that it was an unspoken rule to be ready to fight demons. The commander said that, after all, they were demons. He added that, a long time ago, he almost exterminated humanity. Geo called out to him. Sedum said that in some countries, it was a mandatory duty for aristocrats and knights to destroy nests. He asked Geo if he knew about that. Geo asked what about those demons they had seen in the valley. He asked that wasn't it strange to call them a legion. Sedum answered in the affirmative. He said that there were too many of them to call them stragglers. Geo asked if they had a nest nearby. Sedum replied that it looked like it. Geo shouted, asking if that wasn't bad. Sedum replied that it was certainly bad. Sedum ran off somewhere. He was called out by Molly. Geo told him to wait. The warrior girl said she didn't think he had to talk to him like that to scare him. Sedum agreed with her and apologized. Sedum told Margils that that was why he was only going to say one thing. Geo said that if they left the nest unattended, another horde of demons would soon attack the village. Sedum said that the focus now was to now concentrate on getting to the village safely. Geo agreed. He figured he wasn't the type to actively flaunt his skills. He realized that it wasn't something that could be just left like that out of his own selfishness. Geo realized that he was counting on him to say that he could have ruined the nest. Geo figured that if he was saying there was a nest somewhere on this mountain where demons appeared, he had to destroy it. Geo covered his mouth with his hand. His face changed. Geo sat alone by the fire. He thought he had slept on a bed the day before yesterday, and yesterday in that evil mage's tower, and tonight in the adventurer's tent. The warrior told him he could rest. Sedum said to make him feel like their guest. Geo thought he hadn't even helped them with their tents, and he was the only one occupying the tent. Geo promised he would definitely help them tomorrow. It was morning. The warrior apologized to Geo for the few minutes they had before they set off. Geo yelled for them to wait for him. He flipped through a book. Sedum replied that they would wait for him. Sedum said that D and B's rules required him to read the spell book every morning and re-prepare the magic he had used yesterday. He added that it was more of a morass than he thought. Geo apologized. Sedum said it was fine. Geo said he was done. Geo cast the invisible medium spell. An object appeared in the air. The warrior noticed that the thing was hovering. Sedum agreed with him. The girl said that still, she didn't see how the magic worked. The girl continued that she could tell that the magic he was talking about and their magic technique were completely different. Geo thought it was probably best to think that. Sedum said that they had to move out then. Geo agreed with him. They started on their way. Molly told Mr. Geo to look over there. The girl pointed her finger. Molly said that it was the village of Yule. She continued that north of the village was the White Sword Castle. Geo was surprised. Sedum said it looked like they could have lunch at the Iron Cauldron Knights Pavilion. The warrior asked what they, and the wine they could drink. Sedum said that was a good idea. Sedum noticed Mr. Margils. He said that what he had behind him, before entering the village, was better hidden in the bushes. Geo was surprised. He asked why. The warrior girl asked that it wasn't like he could carry it like that. The girl added that it would be very suspicious. Geo shouted that he understood. The patrolling man noticed the travelers. He shouted and called out for Sedum. He asked Sedum that he had returned. The patrolling man asked that Mola was with them. He said that they had freed her from the hands of bandits and returned. Sedum started to deny it. Sedum pointed at Geo and said that she was saved by that great mage. Geo turned around. The patrolling man interjected. He said it was still amazing. He thanked the mage. Sedum suggested going into the village. Geo agreed. He thought of not arousing suspicion and being quieter than water and lower than grass. In the village of Yule, on the main street, Geo noticed that this village was busier than he thought. Someone caught his attention. Geo thought a long-bearded man, short in stature and with a solid build, was definitely a dwarf. Geo shouted that he never thought the day would come when he would see them in person. Mala asked Geo if there were any gnomes in the country he came from. Geo answered in the negative. Sedum asked if he knew that dwarves were not uncommon here. Geo was surprised. Sedum said that the village of Yule was a base for trade with the gnomes. Mola added that her father had also traded with the gnomes. Geo replied that it was clear to him. Geo told Sedum that he would hate for people to think too much of him. Sedum was surprised and asked him again. Geo thought that he had met Malu by accident, and yes, he had only used the spells he could help with. He didn't know why people admired him even though he didn't do much. He thought he was embarrassed somehow. The warrior asked he wasn't sure how they wouldn't go. Everyone would soon find out about it. He explained that he was talking about Mr. Margil's great feat. Geo interjected that everyone had. The warrior answered in the affirmative. The girl warrior shouted that there was no need to continue because it was annoying. Geo apologized. The girl was not pleased. He grabbed Geo by the sleeve and dragged him behind her. She asked if he could have a moment. The girl yelled that he was too scared. The girl said that surely he could have used powerful magic. She went on to say that if he didn't take the attitude he deserved, it might have caused people to worry. She asked if that wasn't the case. Mala shouted that it was exactly like that. She continued that he was awesome, so he had to keep being that way. The girl grabbed his hand. Geo was uncomfortable. The warrior told Sedum that Mr. Mappergils was very popular with the girls. Sedum replied that all they had to do was envy. Someone called out to them. Shred told the girls that if they did not let him go, they could not behave appropriately. He asked if that was the case. Geo thanked Shred for saving him. Shred wanted to say something to Geo. Shred said that even though he called himself a regular person, he knew it wasn't going to go away. He asked if that was the case. Shred continued that they said that a hero had to act like a hero, or else the people around them would start to worry. He added that if they thought Geo was weak, there would be people who would want to take advantage of that. Geo said that people were more comfortable with a person who had a lot of strength than with a person who doubted or acted scared while having a lot of strength. He asked Shred what he meant by that. All three of them shouted that that was exactly what he meant to say. Geo thought what an unpleasant statement that was. Geo thought that he felt the story was moving in the wrong direction. He suggested that maybe it was time for a change. Sedum told Geo that if he wanted to continue the conversation, they would be at the Iron Cauldron Night Pavilion. At the Iron Cauldron, someone called out to his father. The man looked surprised. It was Mala. Her father turned around. The man could not believe his eyes. Father and daughter embraced. Her father thanked God that she was okay. He repeated that he was overjoyed. The father told the warrior that he was acting indifferent. but they had saved her and they hadn't hurt her. The father yelled, asking how to thank him. Sedum told him to wait. He continued that it was just a lot of things had happened and changed. The father asked what that meant. The girl said that, for starters, he had to calm down. Everyone looked at her. The pavilion hostess continued that they should have had a glass each first. Father said for that to happen. Sedum said that's how they got Mora back. Father said it was clear to him. He continued that it turns out that the one who saved Mora was this mage. Father shouted that it was a lord using magic. Father said that he was extremely grateful to him. Gio said he hadn't done anything outstanding as a mage. The girl was sure it was his way of trying to show his dignity, but he still needed to grow and grow. Gio was sure that was what they were trying to say. Father thanked Sedum and his comrades for coming to the rescue. Father said that the reward of 3,000 gold coins would be paid in full. Sedum asked Mr. Ild what it was he was talking about. Sedum said that as he said earlier, the one who saved Mora was Mr. Margils. He added that they couldn't accept the reward. Yield tried to object, but Sedum wouldn't let him. Sedum continued that let Mr. Margils accept the reward instead of him. Gio was annoyed. Ild said that if that was what Mr. Sedum was saying, then he should have given the award to Mr. Margils. Gio tried to object. Mal interrupted him. She said that he could have bought a house in the big city of Rillis. She continued that she could ask her father to introduce him if he needed it. Yield said that he would be happy to help him. Gio thought that, in other words, 3,000 gold pieces was equal to 30 million Japanese yen. Gio shouted that it was so much. Sedum asked what he thought it was. He said that it wasn't that abnormal. He continued that he meant that their lives were at stake. Gio hesitated for a moment. Ild said that, however, he did not have the money with him right now. He asked what, so he wondered if he could come to Rillis to pick up the money later. Ild held out the wallet. He said that, at the moment, he only had 100 gold pieces. He asked Gio to accept them as a thank you. Gio thought that if he didn't accept now, it would be rude of him. He accepted and thanked. Gio considered the coins. This, he thought, is it, the gold of geishas? Gio wondered if they would be accepted in this world. He asked what this coin had value. Yield said he could look at it. Yield said that the design here was different, but it was real gold. He continued that he thought he could use them in stores. Gio replied that that's how it was. He had over 3 million gold coins in his endless backpack, and he could use them. He felt more and more sorry to receive those 3,000 gold coins. Gio didn't think it was worth the effort. Mora called out to Gio. Mora said that she had left her father's luggage at the bandit fortress and would like to retrieve it. She asked if he could help her. Yield said that they couldn't inconvenience Gio any further. Mora tried to object. Ild stroked his daughter's head. Gio said there was a saying that said that once you started, there was no turning back. Gio said he understood. He added that he would definitely help. Yield asked if he was sure. Gio replied in the affirmative. Mora thanked him. Gio thought that he had gotten their fortress up high on the mountain, so he had to be there. He said, however, there was something he had to do before he could do that. Gio asked Sedum if that was the case. Sedum was surprised. Sedum said to hear him say that, yes, he was just over the moon. Gio said this was it. Once they started, there was no turning back. Gio said they would destroy the nest of dark demons. It was night in the courtyard. Sedum said that the two of them must have been waiting. The girl asked that this was how he had talked to the village headman. Sedum replied positively. He said that when he told him about the danger of demons attacking the village, he understood and said he would be ready to evacuate. Gio asked what about Mora and the others. Sedum replied that he had relayed to them as well, so he could take it easy. He said that Zerk and the others were to escort them to Rilis. Geo said thank goodness. Sedum said that, in that case, they needed to get down to business. Sedum said that as they needed to destroy the nest of dark demons. Sedum said that if the adventurers found a nest of demons nearby, they were obligated to notify the Knights of Carbonella or the Council of the City of Rilis. Sedum continued that because of the location of the Knights, it would be a good idea to report to the Order of Knights this time. He continued that this was the problem. No legions or nests of dark demons had been discovered here in almost a decade. He added that there were those in the Order and on the Council who despised their duty. Sedum said that no matter how one looked at it, the appearance of demons had dwindled since the Lost War of 6 years ago. Geo asked what he said about the Lost War. Sedum said hometowns, families, friends, pride, and also his own lives. Sedum said that everyone lost a lot back then, that's why they nicknamed him that. The girl said that her father and brother had given their lives to protect Rilis. Geo thought that was when Mola had lost her mother. Geo said that, in that case, it couldn't be allowed to happen again. Geo continued that this time, what Legion was going to do, it was true. He asked that, in that case, he thought those who took it lightly would be serious. Sedum said that only if they believed it. Geo looked back and forth at the girl and then at Sedum. He was trying to say something. Sedum asked who would believe a story where they saw a legion of demons, but some mage passing by took to dropping rocks from the heavens on them. Sedum went on to say that it wasn't that they had the trust of the Order of Knights and the Council. He said that, to be honest, it was entirely possible that they would have reacted skeptically and very slowly. Geo remembered that he had heard that often in Japan, only the latest confirmed information from adventurers about the appearance of demons, that is, from them. He figured no one had attacked the village, so they wouldn't take their word for it. Sedum said they would believe it when they saw the destruction in the valley. He continued that, or when strong dark demons would start appearing. The girl said it was just a lot of damage for nothing. Geo said that, then, he thought he wouldn't have to demonstrate that he was a top-notch mage, and that he could defeat an army of dark demons. The girl replied that she was afraid he had to do so. Sedum said that, by the way, they had no other options but that. He continued that that's how much he wasn't aware of what he had done. Geo said that, in other words, from the beginning, he had to make them believe him and it was up to him. Sedum answered in the affirmative. Geo assumed that the point of their advice was so that he wouldn't become famous as an unreliable mage. Geo said he was going to destroy the demon lair, but he thought he would just accompany the Order and use spells when they were needed. He thought that if he thought that way, he was too naive. When Geo thought about it since he had come here, he thought of himself as someone who played according to his role in society. He asked himself that, in other words, was his personality not good enough? Just a few days ago, he was an experienced employee who had worked for the company for 20 years. He was a mild-mannered middle-aged man who loved games, and he had a kind of such image, a personality that matched him. Geo said that maybe it was because he felt fluffy and lacked confidence. For him, who woke up in prison, there was no personality attached to him. He had no basis for his existence. In another world threatened by dark demons, the strength of the identity he had to take surpassed common sense. Geo asked himself that he was just a lost stranger from another world who had lost his memory. He thought that was entirely possible. Geo said that he understood them. Geo continued that, for starters, he would try to make himself look like a great mage. He told the girl that she still looked at him with disdain. Geo said that he couldn't speak for himself, and it was true that he had power. He continued that he now had to take responsibility for a character named Geo Margils. Gio thought that until they found the nest of demons and destroyed it, he would assume the identity of a great magician. Sedum said that, in that case, they had to move out tomorrow. Gio agreed with him. Sedum said that they would go to the White Sword Castle. In the morning, before heading to the White Sword Castle, Gio was rereading the spells. The girl asked if she could have a few words with him. Gio invited her in. The girl asked if it would be more appropriate if he spoke it more like a great mage. Gio coughed. Gio said it sounded good. The girl asked that he seemed to have some business with her there. Gio said he had just one question he wanted to ask her at this urgent time. The girl agreed. She said that she only had one question she wanted to ask him at this urgent time. The girl said that it had been over 200 years since the first headmaster of the Magic Academy. She went on to say that it was a magic that was inherited and continuously evolved. The girl said that even if she and the other members of the Mage Guild combined their powers, they would never be able to match his magic. She asked that she wanted to know if his magic was a special grace. The girl asked if this magic was a skill that anyone could learn. Gio fell silent. He thought it was a simple random customization based on the game. He thought he didn't even know what to say. Gio replied that there was a way to train in Gio Margil's setting that was based on D&B. The girl lowered her head. Gio asked that something was bothering her. The girl replied that there was such a thing. The girl said that depending on the answer, the world they had always believed in could have been razed to the ground. Gio said that there were ways to learn how to use magic. Gio continued that it didn't mean that even if he taught the use of magic, someone could master it. Gio said he understood her concern because he was anxious himself. The girl asked that he was serious. Gio said that the world they believed in could collapse. That applied to him as well. He said that from his point of view, her magical power was also amazing. Gio asked that it wasn't. He figured that unlike his magic, she didn't have to repeat and recite them. Gio asked that he could have asked what that magic technique was from her. The girl replied that there was no problem. The girl said that magic technique was the art of controlling the hidden forces of nature by manipulating the magic that circulated in their bodies. She continued that 1 in 10 were born with magical power and could feel it in their bloodstream. Gio asked if a person with magical power could see the magical power of others. The girl answered in the affirmative. She said that, however, she did not see that he had magic. Joe's magic was to draw the forces of chaos from outside nature to alter reality. Apparently, they were fundamentally different. Gio asked, this meant that anyone born with magical abilities could use magic. The girl answered in the negative. She explained that even if he possessed magic but couldn't recognize the spell board, he wasn't a real magician. Gio asked what the spell board was. The girl said he didn't seem to have one. She began to explain. The girl explained that in addition to the total amount of magic power, her magic board now contained fire, wind, whip, arrow, and there were magic words. She said that if he used those magic words, he could read aloud a combination of, for example, whip and fire. The girl added that this was how fire whip magic worked. Gio said that was the Mr. System in their realities. The girl interjected him. Gio told her not to worry and pretended she hadn't heard anything. The girl looked at him questioningly. Gio had something else he wanted to say. Gio asked what the bandit leader said, if he knew the Sage faction. The girl replied that it was one of their faction. She continued that they mages belonged to 4 factions because of the differences in their views on magic. The Conqueror faction thought of it as a weapon given by the creator to fight dark demons. The Holy faction thought magic was wisdom given by the god, the creator, and thought it was useful for the development of humanity. The Investigator faction used magic, exploring to unlock the secrets of the world. The sage's faction was excellent at making magic tools, making the very study of magic independent. The girl said that, by the way, she belonged to the Conqueror faction. Geo thought it was similar. The girl said that the leader of the bandits was a mage. She continued that he was hated by most of the faction. He must have been an outcast. The girl smiled and asked if there were any questions. Geo was starting to get worried. He replied that was all for now. Sedum asked that they were whispering with each other again. Sedum said that he was wondering when he was going to leave the room and here. Sedum asked if they could flirt some more or if they could move out. The girl interjected him. Geo apologized for getting carried away. The girl said that they were chatting about serious things. Sedum said he didn't blame her. They were getting along well. The girl called him out. The girl yelled that he had it all wrong. Geo thought that he would not want to be misunderstood like this old man. He decided to tell Sedum about it later. They reached the White Sword Castle. Geo thought that the White Sword was as good a defense tower as a sword. He said that as the great mage Geo Margils, he would do his best for their work. The man said that the captain of the Order of the Knights of Carbonella, Amringal Sardish, had listened to them. He continued that the entire Order of Knights thanked them for the information they had provided. Geo said that there was no need to thank them, for these creatures were a threat to humanity. He continued that he believed that the Knights of Carbonella could have taken action. A dignity, he thought, one that he usually greeted with the utmost respect. Someone said it was good news. The knights said the adventurer Mr. Sedum, Lady Mage Clara Andal, and the magic-using wizard Mr. Geo Margils. He asked them to come in. The head repeated what the knight had said. He said that he was glad to meet them. Clara asked that he had to become strong even though he was the leader of the group. Sedum replied that if he couldn't prove himself, he would be underestimated by the other knights. He continued that he was a great mage, after all, so it would be okay. He added that he believed in him. Geo thought that as a former employee of the company, it was a very difficult time for him psychologically. He realized that he had to hurry to make things go smoothly. The captain said that the head of the Realist Adventurer Guild, Mr. Sedum, if he wanted to give them a detailed explanation on the matter. Sedum replied in the affirmative. Sedum said that in the valley of the mountain, south of here, they had discovered a legion of dark demons that were heading towards the village of Yule. He went on to say that they were able to defeat them thanks to that wizard Margils. Sedum said that a legion of demons could not appear in such numbers without a nest, and if they searched the valley, they would find one. He added that they would want to move out immediately. The captain thanked them. He asked the others if they had any ideas. Ord, captain of the third company, said it was a serious matter, and he thought they should have sent a reconnaissance party to find out what was going on. Espinet, the general staff, interrogated him. He asked what he would have done if they had sent a reconnaissance unit and there actually turned out to be a nest of demons. He continued that food, supplies, medicines, clothing, and armor, fodder for horses, if there were any wounded, they would be paid for medical expenses, and in case of death, compensation for the family of the deceased. Another warrior added that one could not do without patrols and guards for the villages, while one also had to pay the knights who would do the extra work. He continued that, to put it bluntly, the budget did not allow. Ord said how so, we would have to make do with what we had. Another warrior shouted that it was just the way it was. He shouted, asking how the Order of Knights could allocate money for the battle. Geo couldn't believe that lack of funds was the main enemy of the Order of Knights. The intelligence officer, Irisa, asked if the dark demons had really shown up. She asked that she hadn't received reports from her subordinates, so Sedum said that all the information was reliable, when one could doubt his word. Irisa yelled, asking if he had lost his mind. Espany said that the idea that their wizard had defeated a legion of dark demons was too mind-boggling to be true. Another warrior said he was right. Someone said that no matter how much of a wizard he was, a legion was impossible. Geo thought, as expected. Geo thought then now, as they had planned with Sedum. Geo asked how they thought he was a fraud. Espini replied that he had said no such thing. Geo said they didn't understand because magic was a truth that never existed in this world. Geo shouted, asking that they let him show them. Geo shouted the power of his spells. The warriors stood in bewilderment. Geo thought they had bought it. Geo thought he should have not been shy. He said, "Open the gates of magic." He thought he'd played his part. Geo shouted that he had to come and incarnate. The knights whispered. Someone said it was a spell to summon 8 meteorites from the sky that would fall on the enemy's heads. Someone else asked what he was even talking about. Geo stretched his hand toward the window. He cast the meteor spell. Meteors started falling everywhere. They were destroying everything around them. The knights began to scream. Someone shouted that rocks were falling from the sky. Someone asked what the explosion was. Another shouted that such a thing was even possible. A third shouted that it was amazing. Sedum said they looked even more outrageous up close. Geo thought that according to their own plan, it was like a villain threatening them with a spell. Geo said that he felt bad for putting holes in the ground. He added that, if necessary, they could claim the expense later. Geo continued that he would like to give them Jargul, the man who had gotten him, and the traitors attacked by bandits. He said he would like them to dispose of him according to the law. Espinet asked what he had said about that criminal mage. He asked where he was. Geo replied that he would get him out right away. Espinet interrogated him. Geo said that he would use this spell to summon the stone statue that belonged to him. He used the summoning spell. The statue appeared in front of Geo. Someone shouted that it was a stone statue. Geo said that it was useless in that state. The knight shouted that he pulled the stone statue out of nowhere. Geo continued that he was going to use this spell to remove magic within a 3-meter radius. He used the spell of releasing magical power. He pointed his hand at the statue. The knights were even more surprised. Someone shouted that the stone statue had become human. The mage gasped. Ord said it was amazing. He asked what was happening in the first place. Geo sat down. He said it was his, so the mage had to return the staff. Espinet watched the whole thing. Espinet shouted that it was indeed Jargul who was wanted. He ordered the knights to take him to the prison. The warriors obeyed. The knights grabbed the villain and took him to the prison. Geo was smiling. The captain told Geo that he realized what the wizard was capable of. The man continued that he and Sedum were telling the truth. The captain said that it had become clear to him that the magical force was extremely powerful. He apologized for the inconvenience. The captain said he was sorry. Geo said he didn't mind. Against the captain of the Order of Knights, he was a bit unpopular himself. Geo said he would say it again. Everyone listened to him. Geo said that he believed the Knights of Carbonella could take appropriate action against the nests of dark demons, but if they needed his help, he would gladly help them. The captain wondered. Afterward, the man lowered his head and began to laugh. The captain replied that his help was comparable to 1,000,000 reinforcements. Geo smiled. The captain continued that as of today, Mr. Grand Mage Margils was the most encouraging ally of their Order of Knights. Ord drew his sword from its sheath. He shouted that the Great Mage was now their ally. Ord shouted that the victory of the White Sword and the extermination of the Dark Demons. The other knights followed his example. The knights repeated after Geo thought it looked like the presentation had been a success. After negotiating with the order, Geo and a select group of knights went to the bandits' former haven to destroy the nests of the dark demons. The fort, which was previously raised like a rock, was returned to its original position and supplies were brought in one by one. In the control room, the deputy of the first group, Gunnar, offered to confirm the operation. He revealed a large map and said that the fort was in the center, and the first group would form a defense line in the east, and the second group in the south. The demons appearing from the valley would be destroyed before they could climb the mountain. Meanwhile, the elite squad led by Lord Sedum, Clara, and Margils, and other members will head up the valley to locate and destroy the demon nest. After that, the elite squad would immediately return to assist in destroying the remaining demons. As for the nests and demons, about 10 years ago Gunnar had seen a nest, a sphere the size of a cow, with dark demons inside. Geo wanted to clarify something. He thought it would be possible to destroy the nest with magic or a sword. Gunnar asked not to worry, and said that it could be destroyed. Apparently, they were the only elite unit. 2 of the knights present shouted out, asking to be taken with them. Gillian asked them not to talk nonsense. It was already clear that he would go along with them. The deputy of the second group, named Riolia Carinella, sister of Gillian, exclaimed that she would also go with them. Gunnar was shocked that even Mrs. Riolia wanted to go with them. In any case, these 2 were squad captains, and their ranks had to be considered. One of the knights offered to leave it to their master mage. Gillian explained that he too was of the Carbonella lineage and bore the name of Carbonella, who had created the Order of Knights. He certainly thought he was the one who would defeat the dark demons. Riolia ordered her brother to shut up, for she too was of the Carbonella lineage. Gunnar clutched his head. He clearly didn't want to listen to all of this. The old man realized that this was not going to be easy. The hero didn't mind that they had pure intentions, but Gunnar was right. It would be foolish for 2 captains to end up in a dangerous place. The old man Espen clapped his hands together. He would request that Gillian, Riolia, and Gunnar accompany the elite squad. He would, of course, take command of the second squad. Gillian explained that sometimes the chiefs of staff were able to get good results. His sister also thanked him for such an offer, but Gunnar was shocked by it. Margils remarked that this old man was selecting men in such a way as to send them out as cannon fodder. Espen had said he believed the 3 of them in that case. Gillian asked to trust them, and they would surely protect them. Margils had to agree with them. It wasn't such a big request for him. The next day, their entire group gathered at the foot of the mountain. They knew when the dark demons might attack, so they needed to stay vigilant. Sedum hoped the others understood him, and the group accepted his orders. The hero said he would like to use a spell before they continued. Sedum was fine with that. The man replied that this spell would force him and all of his allies within a 3-meter radius out of space. The hero activated his magic and applied an out-of-space movement. The rest of the group noticed some changes. Sedum and the others looked around in surprise. It was as if they were in a lighted room. Gillian touched the light wall and asked what it was. Clara didn't understand what the spell was either. It was a movement outside of space. It moved them from the normal space they were into subspace. The proof was that they saw everything in a distorted way. While they were in subspace, it couldn't be detected from normal space and people were invulnerable to attacks, but they could also pass under space. But also, the man wouldn't be able to touch normal space by being here. Sedum sighed heavily and told the hero that he had everything. Gillian said that was just outrageous. Riolia hurried over to the mage sand and called out to him. Her face was quite intimidating, so Geo tried to smile at her and hide his caution. But then her face changed drastically. Almost in tears, she looked at Geo and assumed that he was the god himself. She thought he was the very messenger of the Esginia, the patron saint of winter. The man explained that she was wrong. If his power looked like that of a god, it was because their power of faith was too great. Geo wanted to walk away from the conversation and suggested they move on. The rest of the group realized that he was just running away from her. The hero decided to look at the spells he had prepared for today. Right now his spells were at level 9. They included Meteor, Full Cure, Time Stop, Create All Sorts of Monsters, Death Words, Wall of Chaos, Move Out of Space, and Invulnerability. Preparation could only be done once a day, and powerful spells had to be used with caution. Sedum alerted the group and abruptly ordered them to stop. Their group came across large demons that sat by a rock eating their prey. Gunnar told Mr. Sedum that the demons were standing with their backs to the wall, but Sedum noticed it himself. The monsters stood as if they were guarding the gate behind them. It appeared that there was a nest there. Gilion suggested that they kill this stone demon and break in, but the hero disagreed. He said that they had to check behind the gate first, for it was dangerous to go in without knowing anything. Sedum asked the Geo how he was going to find out what was inside. The hero replied that he had something that could be used. With a smile, he pulled a scroll from his robe. But when he unfolded it and placed it on the floor, Clara thought it was a plain white piece of paper. Geo smiled and suggested that she just look at it. With his magic, he activated the scroll, and an entire system appeared on the white piece of paper. Gilion assumed it was a map, and Geo confirmed his guess. With this item, called cartography, it was possible to automatically construct a map of the nearby caves. Looking at it, it turns out that the other side of the gate was an underground passage. If the nest is the source of the stone demons, then the underground passages should be large enough to get through. Sedum pointed his finger at the map and said that there was a loophole here. They were all just narrow roads that even a giant demon couldn't pass through. If this was the only way in and out, there was no need to block the road. Geo suggested they go inside in that case. He said he would take the demons on, but they needed to get back to normal space to use the spell. For now, he wanted the others to accompany him. Gilion and his sister happily supported him. The girl explained that she wouldn't let the demons touch him with even a finger. Geo remained silent and smiled at the boys with a dose of awkwardness. At that moment, Clara walked up to him. She said she had a protection spell called the Storm Wall and asked the hero to remember that they weren't the only ones. Geo smiled and said that of course he relied on her as well. In that case, he suggested moving into normal space. The hero tapped his staff and ordered the gate of magic to open. This spell caused the death of all living creatures up to level 32 within a 10-meter radius. This skill was called the Stare of Death. All the demons that were in the vicinity began to drop dead to the ground. Those monsters that were apparently higher level immediately sensed the enemies and attacked them. A few of the protagonists' arrows went straight to the demons' heads, but they still continued their attack. Clara stepped forward and used a chain of fireballs. The flames rained down on the monsters, and they disappeared. Geo said that with this spell, corpses up to level 36 were controlled as zombies at will. Deadite control could be applied to them. With those words, Geo lifted several of them up. At Joe's order, the huge monster hit its ally in the head, who didn't expect it at all. Gilion said that it was simply amazing. The hero replied that it was a spell that turned the target into dust, and used the next spell called Destruction. A gate opened in front of the group of heroes. Geo guided a large monster forward and ordered it to kill all the demons inside. Using his staff, he activated light magic and motioned for them to follow. No sooner had he stepped forward than someone's hand stopped him abruptly and pulled him back. It was Clara, who had a rather grim look on her face. Geo had said that she could move into subspace and back while the spell was in effect, so she could do it now. Sedum suggested that the gate should be closed now, not destroyed, especially if they could move between spaces. Clara replied that if a demon came in and attacked them, they would be in trouble. Geo realized he was a bit hasty and apologized. He decided to close the gate tightly and used a stone wall on it. Clara looked back and noticed that they were blocked. The hero thought it was all right now and suggested they move on. Sedum agreed that he had some very handy magic. Along the way, they encountered many mutilated bodies of warriors who had come here earlier. Nausea came up to Ryolia's throat, and she covered her mouth with her hand. Gilion clenched his hand into a fist and said that these monsters underestimated humans. He was definitely determined to destroy them. Sedum warned that they would soon arrive at their destination. When they went inside the small room, they saw large smooth black balls that were lying in a pile. Sedum rejoiced and told the others that they had managed to find the nest of dark demons. The hero suggested that it would be possible to use the meteor even underground. Before reaching the nest, he calculated that the meteor would hit the wall. Sedum replied that it would have to go down for once. Riolia suggested that they would have to go down, and after that they would return to normal space. The hero replied that in all likelihood that would be the case. It was a challenge to navigate inside the rock in space and get to the back of the nest correctly. Gilion didn't see why they shouldn't go down the cliffs and suggested they use this ladder. He felt that if they stayed in space, there was no way the monsters would find them. Geo replied that they would just do it just in case. It was just that everything had gone smoothly until now, and he thought they should have been more vigilant since it was their nest after all. Sedum was beginning to realize things. If one concentrated and knew the terrain and distance, it wouldn't be hard to get there. He said he would lead the way inside the cliff. Geo warned that this nest could attack them on its own. He needed the others to return to normal space and defend it for 10 seconds. Gilion didn't think 10 seconds would be enough for them, but that was fine for a Geo. All he asked was that they leave the last attack to him. Gilion pointed his finger at the hero and explained that he wasn't sure about that. He wasn't sure if Geo would destroy the nest if they left it on the hero. The man replied that of course he would. A smirk appeared on the Gilion's face. He thumped his steel chest out of himself loudly and said he would protect him in that case. But first, the Geo was going to use amplification magic on everyone. As soon as he did that, the space around him started to change, much to the girl's surprise. After changing the space, the man applied physical enhancement and enchantments. The whole group felt stronger and examined themselves from head to toe. Geo exclaimed that that was the end of it. Clara gave the hero a grim look and said that this magic power was toolless, but more important now was another thing. She wanted to know when the meteors would fall and hoped they wouldn't hit them. Geo smiled and assured her that everything was fine, for he would use various measures. The hero tapped his staff and addressed the crowd. Geo confidently offered to proceed with their plan. Exactly according to his plan, Geo created several huge monsters that began to thunder down the stairs. They attacked the real demons with all their fury and cut off their heads. The real demons were confused. The creation of the ogre platoon consisted of 12 fighters. They were distracting the demons that were coming out of the nests. The back of the entrance passage was blocked by an iron wall, so the group didn't have to worry about demons returning from the passage. Suddenly, the hero noticed something amiss as one of the demons destroyed his monster. They were suddenly joined by the demons the mages had discovered a decade ago. Geo didn't know that there were even such monsters dwelling here. However, Geo had something else in store. Suddenly, something large flew over the demon mage's head. The hero had a small red dragon that he had summoned by creating all sorts of monsters. Even though it was small in size, but it was not worth underestimating. The dragon opened its maw wide and spewed flames at the enemy. Gunnar explained that it was simply amazing. He thought that at this rate, the dragon could overpower them all. Geo replied that it wasn't. At this point, their role was just a distraction. So far, the nests nearby had no reaction. Joe's gamer intuition told him that this was the last boss, and he could attack now. Geo said they were going according to plan and asked him to cover him. Clara smirked and said that he had said that to them. Gilios confirmed her words and asked to rely on them. Sedum explained that they were behind them. Right in front of them now lay huge black orb-like spheres. As expected, the demons behind them were focused on the ogres and the dragon. Everyone's offensive and defensive characteristics had increased due to the physiological enhancement and enchantments mentioned earlier. Hero realized that if I needed to attack, it was right now. Hero warned the others that they were returning to normal space. The countdown of 10 seconds had already started. Geo asked the Gate of Magic to hear his call. Suddenly, all the demons that were fighting against the enemies looked back at the group of guys. Gilion and the others had their shields ready and said they were on their way. Gunnar defended himself with his shield against one of the monsters and said that there were still sickle demons here. He asked the guys to be careful with the blades on their hands. Geo had 8 more seconds to spare. Gilion retracted his shield and stuck his sword into the ugly creature's stomach, piercing its body through. The demons all continued to advance, and Geo had 6 more seconds left. Suddenly, Clara noticed that one of the nest eggs had an eye and alerted the others. The black smooth sphere suddenly deformed and split the red dragon's body. Its huge eye swept over the Clara that was standing nearby. The sphere used a storm wall towards the group. Gilion and Riola took the blow with their shields and ordered them not to underestimate. There were only 3 seconds to spare. At the second, the group shouted that he was using the storm wall again. The guys were already prepared to repel his attack again, but 1 second expired and a time stop occurred. The black sharp blade stopped right in front of the group's nose and froze in place. The hero thought that stopping time gives a full 20 seconds, and in that time, he would be able to use as many as 2 spells. Suddenly, the group noticed that some sort of force was fighting back a huge black demon. Gilion and Riola raised their heads in surprise. Geo smiled and said that the force field wall had been activated, but that wasn't all. The sphere was waiting to be hit by a single meteor that consisted of 8 meteors of the same kind. The blazing large meteor fell directly on the sphere and crushed it to the ground. The group survived even after the devastating force wave that spread around after the explosion. Gilion didn't understand where such power came from. Riola noticed that the nest was beginning to collapse. Sedum smiled at the hero and said he did well. Not understanding why Geo was silent, Sedum looked at the shocked Mr. Margils. As the nest collapsed, the hero saw something inside. There was the same magic gate that he had thought. He thought that these dark demons were somehow involved with the sightings. If that was the case, then it was possible that the dark demons were also a problem for him that he couldn't get rid of. A week later, the Yule village was partying in honor of the holiday. The girls were serving drinks, and the men were drinking to their heart's content. Sedum said without enthusiasm that the whole village was celebrating the victory over the nest. He asked the hero why he was not at home. Geo replied that he could not be the only one celebrating while the Order of Knights continued to defeat the remaining dark demons. But Sedum thought that was the whole point. Earlier, one of the residents had bowed his head to the hero and exclaimed that he was sorry. The people were more frightened than the last time Gio had been here, and they were on their knees apologizing for running into him. They would rather he wasn't here. In that case, Clara offered to take that fear away. Since Gio was a great mage, surely he could do that. Gil-Ion startled everyone nearby and loudly asked the Lord of the Great Mage to drink with him. The frightened Riola asked her brother not to speak like that, for it was rude. Riola politely asked the hero to dine with them in gratitude for healing her brother's hand. She told her brother that she should have said exactly that. Gil-Ion gritted his teeth and exclaimed that he couldn't let it go like that. Gio thought they were a very energetic brother and sister. The hero wondered if he should have joined this party. But the Gil-Ion grabbed Gio by the neck and dragged him along, saying they would drink until morning. Sedum picked up on his idea and followed them. Before the Gio left, the Gil-Ion called out to the hero and said that if anything happened, he could turn to them. Riola also waved and exclaimed that they would definitely help him. Gio waved goodbye and thanked them for their help. Finally, he could breathe a sigh of relief and thought it had been quite a long time. Sedum and Clara set off with him on the road. The castle next to the village was invited to a banquet and ceremony. The captain of the knights announced the surrender of the bandits forward to his castle. The hero was on the verge of fainting from being overworked both physically and mentally. Sedum patted the man on the shoulder and told him he had done well. Clara hoped the hero was at least feeling his awesomeness. The man smiled at her and thanked her for her words. Sedum asked the Margals what he would do next. He said that they would like to return to the Rilis. Clara told the hero that she would like to accompany him to the Mages Guild. Gio didn't understand the reason and asked her a question. The girl replied that she would like to hear the guild leader's opinion about his magic. She wondered if it was a more advanced form of magic, his source, or if it was completely unrelated. Also, if Gio talked to the guild, it would make it easier for him to move around Rilis as a great mage. Gio looked at Clara's smile and said that it would be very apropos and convenient. There was still a lot of information in this world that he didn't know about, and for that he would have to have a friendly relationship with the Mages Guild as an important force for fighting the dark demons. Gio had hoped to partner with them in the fight against demons, and now he feared he would have to cut that short. Clara replied that she would be happy to see him off. 5 days after leaving, the protagonists arrived at the main gate of the Rilis. The hero looked up at the tall gate with delight. He never thought he would be able to enter the citadel, much less this TRPG. The soldier handed the lanky man a plaque and asked him to write his name and identity. As the hero wrote down his name, he thought he could read the letters of this world after all. The soldier was shocked when he heard the Joe's name and hoped they hadn't made a mistake. The surprised hero confirmed that it was him. The soldiers realized that he was the great magician who had helped the Order of Knights in destroying the nest of demons. For some reason, Gio had a bad feeling. The enthusiastic people called him a hero and thought that the staff in his hands had summoned meteorites. Some thought that the others were in a hurry and were afraid to make him angry because the hero might drop a rock on them. Clara told the hero that if he kept quiet like that, they wouldn't move. Gio tapped his staff on the ground and apologized for the noise to the respected citizens of the Rilis. He introduced himself as a magician named Gio Margals, and it was a big deal for him to visit their town. He apologized, but he was in a big hurry. If they were okay with that, they could let him pass. The soldiers along with the others immediately graciously parted and asked him to pass. Gio waved at them and thanked them for their help. In the city of Rilis, there was a beautiful square by the fountain. There, beautifully dressed people were relaxing and having fun. Sedum waved goodbye to the guys and said he had to go. He wanted to notify the Adventurers Guild of their actions and left. The hero asked to tell them not too much and waved goodbye. Clara went ahead and said they should go too. As they walked, the rest of the locals recognized the mage from the rumors and began to stare at him. Suddenly, Clara heard someone behind her throw herself at Gio with a hug. The hero didn't expect to meet Amala here and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The girl had already heard that he had destroyed the nest of demons, and after that she had been waiting for him. Mola said that the knights had brought them the things they had left behind in the bandits' fort, and she thought that Gio didn't want to see her. Guy exclaimed that it couldn't be. The hero said that he had an appointment with Mr. Ild, and he was going to see him. In that case, the Maul didn't understand what they were waiting for. Gio hesitated to answer and was slightly confused. At that moment, Clara came up to the hero and grabbed his arm. She sternly told Mola that they now had something to do. Mola understood, and with a smile pulled Gio by his sleeve in her direction. Clara meanwhile irritably pulled the hero in her direction and reminded him that they had things to do. For as long as it seemed to the hero the beauty and the babe couldn't share it. Gio would like to say that he was in love with her, but the first was the child of an acquaintance, and the second was a business partner. The hero stroked the Maul's head and apologized to her. He would like to get rid of the problems in the Mage Guild first, and when he was done, he would come to her house. Mala sadly lowered her head and realized that his work wasn't finished yet. The girl said they had the biggest store on the shopping street, so it wouldn't be hard to find him when he arrived. She said she would wait for him until he arrived. Gio waved goodbye to the mall and apologized to her. Clara put on a grim smile and replied that she was sorry that Gio had to prioritize problematic things. That was why he had apologized to her. After a while, Gio along with Clara came to a large building. They were standing at the main gate of the Mages Guild, and this was where the Rillis branch was located. The guild worker alerted the head that he had brought a mage and a 5th stage mage, Clara Andal. The head agreed and allowed them to enter. Once the heroes were inside, he welcomed them to the Mage Guild. A young-looking man introduced himself as the chief CEO of a Rillis mage named Helidor Sauron. To his right sat the deputy branch chief of the 2nd stage German, and to his left sat a 3rd stage Nazarii woman. The hero introduced himself as a mage named Gio Margils, and said it was a pleasure to meet them. It seemed to him that the head was younger than he had imagined. However, as the branch leader, he had a confident and friendly expression and attitude. Helidor had heard of the mage through rumors, and thanked him for coming to this meeting. Gio was convinced he had an advantage here. Helidor smiled hospitably and asked not to be shy and to take a seat. The CEO assumed that the hero had come here from afar and asked how he liked their city. The man replied that it had a wonderful cityscape and he thought it was a very nice and lively city. The CEO was glad to hear that. He said that if the hero stayed long enough, he would be sure to watch the famous boat dance. Gio was delighted at such a suggestion. One of the people present asked the leader to get to the point. Helidor came to his senses and decided to start a dialogue. He told Mr. Gio that now they were only sure that he had no magical abilities, but they had received word from the Order of Knights. There was no doubt that he was using great magic to destroy the Dark Demon army. They had no choice but to wonder about it. In their opinion, it was impossible to use magic with a completely different theory. The hero assumed that they were cautioning him, in which case he asked them to be cooperative only. He said to Helidor that he had the same feelings as they did, because to him magic was the norm, but magic technology was a threatening technology. It seemed surprising to Helidor that the hero thought exactly the same way. Gio smiled and said that was why he would like to learn more about magical technology. Of course, he was willing to provide as much information about magic as he could. Helidor grinned and explained that it was certainly a generous offer. Still, apparently they wanted Geo to show them his magic once. There was a look of doubt and consternation on the faces of those present for some reason. Nazaria had already heard that the hero could turn people to stone and summon meteorites. She wanted to know if it was really true. As he said, it was hard to believe until they could see it for themselves. If that was their will, the hero was fine with it. He felt that a moderate spell would be better than a meteorite to the head. Helidor would ask that magic be clearly different from magical techniques. Apparently, he wasn't being modest, but he didn't really believe in his powers. Helidor asked if the hero could create dragons or dark demons. He would like to see something like that first. Helidor noticed the strange look on the girl's face and asked what was wrong, but Clara waved her head negatively. Geo noticed that her hand was clenched into a fist under the table. The hero smiled and thought that he couldn't see Clara's face like that again. Geo offered in response to their request to just meet the dragon. Helidor smiled and said he was looking forward to it. He said he was sorry for some reason and looked at Herman, who nodded his head in agreement. Herman showed the round little device around his neck. He hoped Geo wouldn't mind if he watched his magic from here. The man explained that it was a device that could detect even small amounts of magical power and did no harm. It made sense to Geo, and he certainly didn't mind. In that case, Geo offered to begin and placed his staff on the table, then stepped away from the table. He straightened his arm and ordered the gates of the magical path to open and accept the incarnation. The faces of Helidor, Celine, and Herman reflected fear and anticipation of something terrible, but Clara's face was unwavering. The hero ordered a small red dragon to be created with this spell and used for 30 minutes. He activated the monster creation magic, and as if out of nowhere a real dragon flew out. Celine ducked down and screamed in fright. Helidor and Germanom also stared at the fearsome creature with fright. Helidor came to his senses and asked Herman what their device was showing. A frightened Herman showed the device to Helidor and said he had no reaction. The boy pressed his lips together and said that it just couldn't be. Helidor explained that it was just great, since Geo was able to do it without using magic power. In that case, he wanted to know what this dragon could have done. He speculated that the dragon could have been an illusion or something like that. Geo looked at his dragon and said that it certainly mattered. Everyone present jumped up from the table as the dragon opened its maw and spewed flames almost onto the Helidor. Geo blushed a little and thought that he hadn't planned on going that far. Clara asked everyone to calm down. She reminded them that all three of the highest-ranking individuals were here now, but she was sorry. A look of bewilderment appeared on the Helidor's face. He understood and agreed that it was a terrifying technique and the Geo magic was quite real. The Helidor asked to accept an apology for his rudeness to the hero. Geo was fine with that and said that if they believed him, he would like to express his gratitude. Herman raised his hand and apologized for interjecting himself into their conversation. He wished that Geo would put his dragon away somewhere. Herman came to his senses and apologized for that. He pointed his hand at the dragon and ordered the magic to dissipate. As far as the Hallider realized, this power was also magic. The young CO asked Mr. Margles to explain more about this magic. Geo gladly agreed to explain everything. After a while, everything became clear to the Helidor. By reciting a certain spell in the process of training, he attracted various forces. By doing so, he was not using magic boards or letters. Clara replied that their magical powers were already present in nature and in their bodies, but Margelsan's magical power was different. It seemed like he was pulling out the power of chaos with the help of spirit. To be clear, Geo said it was borrowed magic power. You could just call it magic power. Helidor thought it would be great if they could match it. Herman thought it would take them many years to train. The CEO wondered if it could be used in conjunction with the magic board. Hiro realized that it confused them, and he assumed that was the place to stop today. Gio turned to the leader. He would like to continue to build a good relationship with the Mages Guild as a fifth step or face. Helidor was shocked at such a suggestion. He was thankful that the hero had said it. It seemed to the hero that he was somehow slurring his words. It shook the very foundations of what they called magical technique. Gio realized that this was not a small story that could be completed in a single discussion. The man realized it was best not to push them in these situations. Gio said, as he took his time with their answer. He smiled and said that his magic would be blue sky for their mages. Gio felt that everyone had to discuss the matter in detail and come up with an answer. He also specified that if they had any questions, they could contact him at any time. Clara grinned and asked the leader to think about it. They could organize and inform the other supervisors. They clearly should have considered Mr. Margil's suggestion. Helidor stretched his neck and thought for a moment. It was obvious that this was not an easy decision for him. The CEO got up from the table and asked to be excused. He had to leave for a while. When the protagonists were alone, Gio thanked Clara for her help. But he was worried lest Clara's position in the guild get worse. The hero asked to lend him a favor if she needed help. Clara grinned and said that in that case, she hoped that Gio would tell her that all of his magic was a hoax. The man was surprised at her answer at first, but then smiled. Together they left the office. Gio said that if that was what it took to save her situation, then so be it. Clara didn't mean it at all and exclaimed that he was very stubborn. After the meeting with the Helidor, Clara and Gio went outside. Apparently the hero needed to go to the mall as she was waiting for him. Gio told Clara that he wanted to go, but there was a problem. The girl was shocked that Gio didn't know the way. Clara kept Gio company by walking with him around the city. It had beautiful high domes, the streets were full of people, and there was a semicircular little cube bridge. Clara was not surprised, for the hero was the only one of his kind and all. But she thought he should have gotten caught up on it early. Gio apologized. As they were passing through the bridge he noticed a boat on the water and thought that was the boat dance. There were indeed beautiful dancers in white airy dresses and light capes on the boat and musicians standing beside them. The people on the shore were quietly and sadly watching them. It was very beautiful, but the hero thought it was somehow too quiet for a festival. The girl explained that today's performance was a requiem dance. These dances were dedicated to the victims who had fallen at the hands of demons. 10 years ago, demons had invaded this area. Clara led Gio to a large memorial monument. The hero noticed that there was something written on it. He noticed it as he entered the city. The letters of this world were imprinted in his memory, or he could read them. It was here that the 23rd Legion of realist citizens fought off the invading demons and died in battle. The hero felt sad and folded his hands in prayer before the monument. Clara told him that when she became a mage, it was to give her strength to protect the city from the dark demons. Helidor had always tried to be a hero and protect people with magic. Despite their differences in goals, she and Helidor were united in their desire to improve their abilities in fighting demons. Clara did not want her efforts to be negated by the magic of the Gio. Helidor feared that the Gio would rob him of the hero status he had gained. It made the man uncomfortable, for it was a crime to be observers. He decided to ask the girl a question. Gio believed that one's efforts and accomplishments could not be taken away from a person and asked for Clara's opinion. Those people she had saved with magic up to this time could not be compared. The hero thought that was dumb and hoped that Clara would agree with him. They had cleared out the demon nests with Clara's magic techniques among other things. And compared to that, his magic was nothing. Clara couldn't believe he could say such a thing. Gio said that she used a magic technique to slow down the tentacles. The Carbonella siblings were able to show what they could do, but if it wasn't for her magic technique, they would have died long ago. Gio glanced at an unsure Clara, who lowered her gaze. He didn't realize where he had managed to go wrong. Clara denied it to the end for some reason and looked away from him. Clara turned away from him, walked on, and said with confidence that Gio would be comforted for the rest of the day. Gio didn't understand what she meant. The girl asked what he would do when the sun went down and the inner gate was closed. In that case, he wouldn't be able to pass through. The hero smiled at the girl leaving and thought that he could love this world with its rich culture and hardworking people. He told her that he was on his way. Clara looked ahead and said that the Molly house was that way. She thought that now the hero would not get lost. Gio thanked her for her help, but the girl didn't understand what he was thanking her for. She thought she had just shown him the way, but Gio thought he had yet to thank her for all she had done for him. He seriously wanted to thank her and called Clara his savior. Clara smirked as she called herself the savior of the great mage. She admitted that it would do her a lot of good in the future, but the hero didn't know what she was talking about. The girl grinned and said she was just kidding. It was just that they lived in a world where they never knew when demons would appear that could kill her and their family. If there was a real person who could change this world, she would give anything for it. Gio wanted to talk to Clara some more, but Clara said she had to go now. She wished him good luck as she said goodbye. Ald popped up to meet the hero and thanked him for stopping by. Molly came out with a tray of pie and asked to eat before the food got cold. Yald was glad that he could finally give Gio 3,000 gold coins. Gio thought he had become a little reluctant to take them. Ald called out to Mr. Margils, but he remembered something. He asked the Ald to listen to him. Gio would like to ask one favor in lieu of the 3,000. The Ald saw no problem with that, and said he would be glad to help him. The hero admitted that he actually became the owner of the bandit fort. However, it would be very difficult to manage this large fort alone. He thought about that already there. With the people that Yald trusted, Gio wanted them to find a man to control the fort. Yald smiled and said he understood. He asked if there was anything else Gio wanted to say to the man. Gio pondered and said he wouldn't complain about him if he was reliable. He should be prudent, would be able to stand up for himself, but also that he should be easy to talk to. Yald understood and said he would try to find the best man to fit the criteria. Gio agreed with him and said he believed in him. A whole hour had passed since this conversation. The hero was still sitting behind his glass and grimly lowered his head, listening to Yald talk. The intoxicated Yald was already telling them that spending money on dancing in boats was stupid. The hero sipped from his glass and wondered where the honest and intelligent Yald had gone. The Yald turned to Mr. Margils with the hope that he was listening to him. Gio had already listened to the story of the Mall's mother's death. The hero considered himself guilty for making him drink too much. The grim Mall took the spoon in her hands and apologized for her father. She knew that her father couldn't drink at all, but the hero assured her that it was okay. According to him, every man has moments when he gets drunk and wants to forget about everything. Mola apparently didn't know about it. Yald thought that Gio was going to flirt with his Mola in front of him and reminded him that she was only 14 years old. Mola blushed and called out to her father reproachfully. The hero laughed and held out his glass to Yald, saying that he apparently hadn't had enough to drink. Yald was glad the hero realized that. It was what he had expected from Gio. Gio handed a whole jug of the drink to the Mall's father, who greedily began to drink directly from his throat. The girl opened her mouth in surprise. Gio exclaimed that it went down his throat nicely. After 10 minutes, the hero finally waited for that very moment. Gio thought the quickest thing to do would be to get the Ilda drunk, but perhaps he had given him too much to drink. The man fell sound asleep right at the table. He slept even though they tried to wake him up. The men asked for their forgiveness, and then took Mola's intoxicated father by the hands and led him out of the room. Mola filled the hero's glass and sincerely apologized for it. Her father had said he wanted to meet him soon and return the favor, so she got flustered. Gio chuckled and said he shouldn't have been thanked so much. But the girl thanked him so loudly that Gio almost choked on his drink. She wanted to thank him for saving her from the hands of the bandits, and for exterminating so many demons and their nests. He had done something unimaginable. Gio replied that it could be called that. Mal said that because he had been there, everyone, including her, had been saved. Mola thought that he looked worried now, because he was just a normal person. Now Mal's words made him realize that the powers of his spells were merely borrowed. He had been praised several times since he had come to this world, but he didn't feel bad. But at the same time, he was born with a sense of guilt, roles, and responsibilities that didn't fit him. It was comparable to living with a false mask of a great mage, and it was a matter of keeping those feelings alive. Mola didn't understand complicated things. However, even if he was simple, he was still a great person. She thought that the hero was a very kind person, and she also thought that from now on he would save more people who would get into trouble. Gio replied that he understood everything. Mola suddenly blushed and bowed to him before hurrying out and saying good night. The hero smiled as he remembered her last words when she said that he would save more people in trouble. Gio thought about the fact that it was possible to change his lifestyle at this age, but protecting the world was too demanding for a simple office plankton. Joe's mind was spinning with rather wizened thoughts about his power, and what he could have done, but didn't. If they wanted to protect them, they had to start by creating an organization that could kill dark demons. If possible, the hero would want to find the cause of the demons and eliminate their source. But it was exactly what the people of this world had already been unable to do for many years. The hero was the holder of the power of a great magician, but was an ordinary office worker. He thought he should try to join forces with everyone else. Gio doubted that everything would be fine if he tried that. But the hero resolutely put the empty glass on the table and said he had to try. In the middle of the night, a man appeared somewhere in one of the buildings, bringing with him a bloody demon's head. He was saying something about Gio Margils. Across from him stood several elven girls in dark armor and listened to him humbly. The bald-headed man said that even at the cost of their lives they had to defeat him, but the hooded man beside him knew it. His ugly masked face turned to his ally and said that it was necessary to destroy the one who was destroying the dark demons. This was the mission of a demon worshipper. The next morning the guy tasted the Mola's delicious scrambled eggs. With full cheeks, he exclaimed that it was very tasty. He told the Mola that she was a very good cook, which embarrassed the girl. The man was happy to encounter such a bright morning. He felt like he had had a little too much to drink yesterday because of Ild. It was wonderful for him to wake up without any kind of hangover. Inside, he was only a level 36 mage, and his stamina was somewhere around level 16. Earlier, when he was an office plankton, perhaps his stamina was only equal to 9. Mala was curious to know why Gio was so joyful. Gio took the glass in his hands and replied that it was because of her inspiring words yesterday. Mola smiled sincerely and explained that she was happy about it. It was because of Mola that he realized and decided what he was supposed to do. A hero was supposed to protect people from demons. They were like a foreign body in the same world that had to be gotten rid of, even if it meant using his existence. These demons would appear anywhere and indefinitely. The hero realized that he couldn't protect the entire continent even if he fought alone. First, a military alliance had to be formed with each country where they would share information about the demons and where they could fight together. A military alliance had to be formed against the dark demons. In addition to the army, they needed to create an organization that would be able to fight against the demons across the borders of another country without the obstruction of their authorities. That is to say, an organization against the dark demons also needed to be created. One would need to get people to recognize the existence of a great magician and gather companions. The hero would also like to be able to develop magic items in the castle, which he had acquired from the Order of Knights. He didn't think he had time to relax. Gio had a quick breakfast and thanked Malu for the food. The girl reached for her plate and said she would clean it herself. At that moment, an owl joined them and called out to Mr. Margils. The man was glad that the Gio was still here. The hero smiled and said that apparently he didn't have a drop of alcohol left in him. The Ilda sighed heavily and apologized for yesterday. The hero said that he was joking, of course, and asked what was wrong. Yalb replied that apparently the others had heard that the Gio had stopped by to stay at his house for a visit. The guilds and nobles had sent many messengers to greet him. The hero thought he had done something wrong and asked the Ilda about it. However, if that was the case, Gio thought it was to their advantage. Mola and her father didn't understand what he was talking about. Gio just wanted to know if he could talk to the city of Rillis about how to deal with the demons. Of course, he would want their help if needed. He asked the Ilda if there were any among these people who would like to see him. He needed the right person for the job. The man pondered and said there seemed to be a certain Braz, if he wasn't mistaken. Gio was curious to know what kind of man he was. Mala's father said that Zato Braz was the chairman of the council in Rillis. He was the first to send a messenger. In truth, the area around Rus Lake was originally the kingdom of Rius. After the fall of the city in the Civil War, some of the most important merchants and nobles claimed autonomy, and the city of Rillis became an independent city-state. The city of Rillis was currently under the jurisdiction of the council. Only the head of each guild could be a member of the council. Internally, Braz was the most powerful leader of the merchant guild. It appeared that they were not only familiar with the domestic and international situation. The hero smiled and said that he would talk to him and also hoped to settle things. Gio said that this way they could cooperate with the city in fighting the demons. The character said he would like to meet with him. He apologized for the inconvenience, but would like to ask to arrange for him to meet the brouhaha. Ald replied that he would do anything for his daughter's savior. And now that Ald heard what Mr. Margils wanted, as a citizen of Rillis, he could not sit idly by. He offered to make an appointment to see him tomorrow. Gio was surprised at this response, then thanked the Ald for his help. Gio was going to try to live up to his expectations. A day later, the Ald provided the hero with a carriage and said that it would take him to the capital, which was far away. In return, Gio apologized for the inconvenience. But in parting, the Ald wanted to warn Mr. Margils about something. He was afraid that there were some people who were interested in him. Such information alerted Gio. Yalv replied that they were canvassing in the area. One of his guild mates had contacted him when he became suspicious. Molly was curious to know who this person was who wanted to know something about the Gio, but Yalv had no idea about it. He didn't think it was necessary to overreact, but he asked the Gio to be careful. But as a farewell, Yalv bowed to the hero, but the man asked not to worry about him. Still, one had to be careful just in case. Among the Gio magic was one he had prepared this morning. He covered his eyes and remembered it. This magic was called Invisible Demon. As soon as Gio uttered it, a black aura began to emanate from the body of Ild and Mala. The father and daughter didn't realize what Gio had done to them, but the hero told them not to worry about it. He had activated this magic in order to protect them. The invisible demon was a familiar that would do any order of the master, but the master needed to choose his words carefully. This spell in general was something to beware of. Gio ordered to bind the person who would try to harm the master. Also, the hero used enemy detection in an emergency. Gio decided that would be enough and decided to move on to the next one. Molly and her father looked at the hero questioningly. The hero pulled out a robe and said it was for Molly. The girl explained that it was very beautiful and asked if the hero really wanted to give it to her. As soon as she put on the robe, she felt that it was very light. But suddenly Mora and her father started to notice that her body was disappearing. At first, the child was frightened. The hero knew that it was one of the most basic items in the TRPG game. Gio asked Child not to worry and warned him that Mora was nearby. Yael didn't understand how her body disappeared. The hero explained that she was wearing an invisibility robe. If one put it on, he would become invisible, and if he took it off, he would return to his normal state. Mora took off the robe and was convinced of the truth of his words. Her body had become the same. Yael bowed to the hero a few times and said that after he used magic and gave the magic item, he felt worthless. Gio grinned and replied that they were his close friends and business partners. If anything happened to them, it would be hard for him. With those words, the hero handed another item to the ilk. It was a small ring called the Genie of Wind. If he rubbed against the ring, the genie would appear. There were limits to what he could do. This genie would fulfill his 3 wishes. Ald had only heard of genies from fairy tales and myths. He gently took the ring in his hands and said it was a national treasure. The man bowed to the hero and thanked him. The hero knew that the Wind Genie was the strongest monster of the 12th level. Gio believed that the ilk would be able to use it effectively. In that case, the man entered the carriage and said that he was traveling. Yael once again bowed low to Gio in farewell. After a while, the hero arrived in the capital city. There the Lord of the Great Magician was welcomed with joy. The chairman of the city council, Rilis, introduced himself as Zato Browse. He bowed low and asked to forgive his rudeness for the invitation. Gio smiled and said he was honored to be invited to join them, but was sorry his visit was delayed. The hero thought that if the leader of the Order of Knights had the posture of a warrior, then he was like a politician or a businessman. No longer did the man feel like an office worker, so he shouldn't have been intimidated. He was now a great mage. Zato took a seat with the hero at the tea table. The chairman had already heard of his great accomplishments from Lord Argonian and Mr. Sedum. On behalf of all the citizens of Rilis, he thanked them for destroying the nest of dark demons. Zato ordered his servant to approach him. The man silently drove a cart carrying a chest filled with gold. Zato said that their gratitude could not be expressed in money, and asked to take at least that. The hero smiled and replied that he was just doing his duty as a mage, but he was grateful for their concern. Earlier, Yael had said that gifts were like congratulations among influential people. If he didn't accept it, it would be considered an insult. Gio was glad that Molly's father had warned him about it beforehand. The chairman was glad that the Gio had accepted their thanks, and now he had less to worry about. Zato took the bell in his hand and beckoned to the maid. He smiled at the man and told him they had some nice tea with cannel leaves. Zato hoped Gio didn't mind, but the hero was delighted and said he would gladly drink it. Watching the maid, the hero was surprised at how neat and graceful they were in their manners. Mr. Zato thought the hero was looking for a servant. Zato apparently wanted to offer to help him, but the Gio replied that it was all right, for he had already asked the Ilda to do so. The Ild is expected to be the leading young merchant in the guild. They were very grateful that he is on close terms with the great mage Geo. Zato felt that this was another favor from the goddess of winter. The hero replied that although he was helping him, there was little that Geo could do to help him in his work as a thank you. Zato didn't think the hero wanted to go that far, or he would incur the wrath of the goddess of winter. Geo smiled and thought to himself that he had one more thing to worry about. Yield had warned earlier that they might have a misunderstanding. He was trying to take advantage of being close to Geo and wanted to advance in the guild. He asked Geo to be careful not to jeopardize his position. The hero tried to tell Zato that he had no intentions of meddling in the affairs of Hilda. It seemed to him that his answer appeared to be the right one. Later, the maid thanked him for waiting and carefully placed his tea on a saucer in front of the hero. Before drinking it, Geo noticed that this tea had a very different odor than the tea on the windowsill. Zato explained that the leaves of this tea were only found in the Canal region of the Northern Kingdom and are more flavorful than other teas. When Geo tasted this tea, his eyes widened. He seemed to be in shock. Zato thought he didn't like it, but the hero said that it was on the contrary incredibly delicious. He could taste it, and it seemed to be addictive. In fact, the hero didn't like the tea at all, but the brows looked like they were enjoying their drink. Geo would hate to spoil the grimace by leaving him alone. Above all, the man didn't want people to think he was a redneck who didn't know what luxury was. Despite his reluctance, the hero continued to drink his tea. The maid who was standing opposite him gave a strange glance in his direction. Geo told Zato that he wanted the support of the humans for the battle against the demons. He would like to work to bring everyone together. It made sense to Braz, and he agreed with his beautiful thought. The hero continued and said that demons were the enemy of humanity. He would spare no effort in the future to protect humans from dark demons. Braz thanked the man for his trustworthy words and asked for permission to pass these words on to the other council and guild members. All of them would surely be very pleased. The hero was pleased with Braz's rather good response. If he wasn't going to deceive the hero, it seemed that a future partnership with the city of Rillis was coming. Moreover, he had no animosity towards the Geo in his words either. The hero said that if there was anything he could do to protect the city, they could tell him and not be embarrassed. Braz thanked him again for his words. He couldn't make this decision on his own, so he would have to discuss it with the guard commander. Barely had the man said this when his hand jerked, causing the cup to fall off the saucer. Braz abruptly grabbed his throat and started coughing. Geo got worried and asked if he was okay. Zato fell to the floor. The hero rushed to Mr. Braz and asked him to hold on. Geo didn't understand what all this meant and looked at his overturned cup. His first thought was of the maid who was pouring their tea. The hero had no doubt that this maid had poisoned his tea. Geo lifted the brows and asked how he was feeling. Zato recovered a bit, and the first thing he asked was how Mr. Margils was feeling, but Geo was fine. The hero thought his tea had been laced with poison, but he succeeded in the antidote and pumped resistance. According to the rules of TRPG, resistance to poison increases as you level up. At level 36, he was already almost 100% resistant to most types of poisons. At that moment, an assistant came into their room and asked the chairman what was wrong. He was confused when he saw the chairman on the floor. Meanwhile, Geo was supporting his head. The first thing the assistant thought, of course, was that Mr. Margils had done something to the chairman. It seemed to the hero that they deliberately wanted to catch him poisoning the Zato. The chairman ordered them not to make any noise, and for no one to come any closer. Zato told Mr. Margils that it was a real conspiracy, but the hero had already realized it himself. Geo asked not to worry and promised to cure him right away. The poison chairman was sure that Rillis would never do such a thing. He looked questioningly at the ring in the hero's hands. Gio smiled and said it was an antidote spell. As soon as the hero held the ring up to the chairman, Zato immediately felt better. The man had detoxified all the poison from his body. The medicine man's ring was a magical item that allowed him to cast spells 3 times a day to heal wounds and detoxify his body. The worried assistant asked the chairman if he was alright. The surprised Zato replied that he felt no pain. The aide rushed to Zato's aid and helped him up. Braz assumed that Mr. Margils was also a priest, but unfortunately that was not the case. The hero replied that it was all thanks to a magical item he had. As far as Zato understood, it was some sort of magical tool, and the hero confirmed it. He thought that the poison might have disappeared, but the chairman still risked losing his powers. The aide feared that Zato was still in some sort of pain, but Braz felt fine. The hero held out a ring to Braz and asked to borrow it for a while. The surprised chairman took the ring in his hand and exclaimed that it was quite light. It was a great magical tool. Zato told his assistant that he and Margils were just about to be poisoned and ordered him to catch in his favorite way the maid who was here. The aide immediately rushed to the door and called for the guards. Whatever it was, Gio was glad that Zato was safe now. The chairman bowed low before the hero and earnestly asked him to forgive him for this. He assured him that the culprit would definitely be caught and asked him to temper his ardor. Gio was frightened and asked Mr. Braz to raise his head. He was not angry, but just thinking about his condition. Zato still didn't know how to apologize for the inconvenience, but only asked not to let himself vent his anger on the Rillis. The hero asked him to calm down and reiterated once more that he wasn't angry. If he poured out, it was only at the maid that got him into this state. Gio liked Rillis the way Zato liked him, so he wouldn't be able to destroy him. And if Zato understood him, he had to raise his head. The chairman listened to the hero's advice, and Gio was grateful for his right decision. Eventually, the maid's clothes were found removed in an alley near the capital. The chairman was sorry that the guards had let her escape. They also found the real maid in the storeroom tied up. Perhaps she was attacked by that girl and changed her clothes on the way here. Someone had used disguise and infiltration, and even escaping in broad daylight when someone could see her. Besides, she didn't react to his hostility detection skill. According to Zato, they had already ordered all the guards to start inspecting the city gates and inner gate. The criminal would surely be caught. He couldn't forgive himself for them targeting the Margil's life. In Joe's opinion, the council must have thought that the criminal's target was him. Zato responded positively at first, but then changed his mind. He shook his head negatively and said that nothing was clear here. The hero thought that he and Braz should have conducted an interview. It would become clear after looking around the council and the capital. And on top of that, given this maid's skill, one would think that she was able to kill 2 people at once. However, it was certainly more difficult than killing one. The hero didn't understand why she didn't take such a risk and assumed that there was another important reason here. Zato thought the hero would like to delve into that. Perhaps this maid wanted to pit him against Zato and the others. The hero smirked and thought it would be best if they could kill them both. If one or both survived, the grudge would remain. Gio asked Zato for his opinion on the person who planned all of this. He had some ideas about who wanted to kill him, but he had little reason to tell the hero right now. Yield had told Gio beforehand about the power struggle between the merchant faction and the responsible faction in the council. He didn't want to interfere if it was a power struggle in the city. However, since she did it in the presence of the hero, he couldn't rule out the possibility that she was still after him. Gio thought about their real target. The hero was afraid that they would implicate Mala and Ilda because they were with him. He couldn't regret it and wished he could immediately start looking for the culprit, but he hadn't prepared any investigation spells for today. Now he had no choice but to do his best to browse. The hero said he would leave it up to Zato. He asked to let him know if they knew anything. The chairman understood and said he would let him know first. Before he left, he bowed to the hero and said he was sorry. He apologized again for today, but Gio asked him to forget about it. The hero asked to call him only on matters of investigation, and to borrow the maid's clothes that she had thrown away. Gio said this with a rather grim and disgruntled face. Zato remained silent for a bit, then agreed and said he would prepare everything. The hero was grateful for his help. Now Gio was going to do his best to make sure of it. He used flight magic and automatic movement. While in the wagon, the hero looked at his lackey and apologized to him. He had a place he wanted to visit himself, but he would have to use his magic to get there. In the meantime, the footman would be able to go back. The man didn't understand what it all meant. Somehow, before his eyes, the hero passed through the carriage and disappeared into thin air. After a few minutes, Gio reached the palace of Mr. Kellador. At this time, the Kellador was writing his papers at his desk in his study. The man entered the study and asked to be excused. The Kellador noticed the Gio in front of him, who appeared as if out of nowhere, and jumped up on the spot. He asked how Mr. Margils could have gotten here, or rather, what the hero was going to do here. The hero was sorry for the way things had turned out. Truth be told, he had just been poisoned, but the Kellador didn't know what he was talking about. The hero knew that if the Kellador had a strong lust for killing or intentions towards him, detecting hostility would help tell by the glint in his eyes. But so far the Kellador had not reacted. Gio had reason to suspect that any potential adversary of his would be able to violate his authority. Right now, he was talking about the Kellador, the leader of the Mage Guild. Kellador was clutching his small device in his hands. He apologized and said that this was an emergency and asked for permission to recognize him. By all appearances, he didn't know. The hero explained that he had flown in, fearing that it might be dangerous to the Mage Guild close to him. Kellador explained that he didn't know that. Kellador had absolutely no idea what this was about. He thought that the hero was trying to gain an advantage by complicating the whole situation. Gio thought that if he was holding the medallion in his hand, then apparently the other person's thoughts were being transmitted to his brain. And yet, no matter how one looked at it, the Kellador knew nothing. The hero apologized for interrupting him and asked the Kellador for his opinion. He wondered who could hate him so much. The Kellador smirked and reminded him that the man was a hero who was able to destroy the nests of demons. He didn't think it was possible for anyone to dislike that. In fact, the Kellador mentally told himself that it was him. His dream of becoming an ally to those fighting against the dark demons had been interrupted, and the hero was in the way at the moment. It had worked out just as Clara had told Gio it would. The hero apologized, but he felt that Kellador needed to think again. Besides, he knew more about the city of Rilis than Gio did. Gio bowed to Kellador and said that he just didn't want to hurt the people close to him. This response surprised the CEO. He replied that rumors about the hero were spreading all over Rilis. If he believed even 1/10 of those rumors, it would never occur to him to go out on the street. According to the CEO, there were stubborn people who couldn't believe in his power. If anyone hated his deeds that defeated the dark demons, it was the demon worshippers. Kellador began to suspect that these people still existed in the Rilis. If that was the case, the CEO had to be their target as well. The hero asked for more details about these demon worshippers. In his thoughts, the Kellador sat back down in his chair. He explained that these people were fanatics, who saw the destruction of the world by demons as redemption. Gio once again questioned what he had heard. According to the Kellador, the believers ranged from slum dwellers to aristocrats and priests. They had rituals to praise the dark demons. He had heard that they practiced to get close to them. It seems they were active in the Northern Kingdom and the New Kingdom to the east. The city of Rilis should have been tracked down during the battle 10 years ago. Geo suspected what would have happened if such people were here. The CO looked up at the man and said that he and the others would clearly be the target of monkish vilification far more than he was. Now that Geo realized he was likely to become a target, he worried about the mall and the ilk. Just in case, for 1,000 cases, and even 100, the hero thought he was a fool. As a result, it was hard to say that his friends could be in danger while the protagonist was away. Geo considered it a team game. The hero only wished that the two of them were alive. With these thoughts, he walked back to Mola and Ilda's house, but there he saw that their house had been attacked. Geo was horrified. He immediately rushed into the house and called out to the Ilda and Mola. Suddenly Mola crashed into him and clutched at him with her hands. Mola was crying and Geo wanted to make sure she was okay. He asked her about Ilda, but the girl kept crying. This scared Geo even more. Geo nervously asked Mola where Ilda was. At that moment a man walked towards them and called out to the Margals as if nothing had happened. Geo was glad they were okay. I'll apologize for that. Geo asked them about what had happened, and the Yield told how a thief had invaded their mansion and taken the Mala. The crying girl said that she noticed two women in the room, and then she passed out. Yield heard the screaming and noticed all of this. In a hurry, he ran to the Mala's room. There was a woman holding Mala in her arms, and the second woman was tied up with something. The hero smiled and thought that the invisible demon had worked properly. Yield had used that ring that Geo had entrusted to him. The momentum of the gene that came out was so great that they jumped out. But perhaps the woman had taken care of that gene by letting his daughter go. She escaped with the second woman freed from her shackles. Either way, Geo was glad that Mola was okay. Mola smiled and said that it was Geo who had protected them, for which she was truly grateful. Yield bowed and said that he had indeed saved his daughter for the second time. The hero replied that he was responsible for what had happened. It became clear to him that the poisoner's target had been him, not the chairman. Geo assumed that it was the handiwork of the demon worshippers and questioned Yield. The Yield replied that it was not. It was rumored that they were conducting a ritual of praise in an underground cave in the city. Mola didn't understand what they were talking about. She clutched at the hero's arm and shouted that it wasn't all because of Geo. The man looked at Mola questioningly. Yield believed that everything was just as his daughter had said, and it wasn't his fault in the slightest. It became clear to Geo what it meant for the great mage to be a hero. It would have a huge impact on the people around him, even if he couldn't answer them. However, if looked at rationally, his friends might inevitably get hurt. The hero decided that he would gladly deal with their abusers. At first, Geo apologized for that, but then he thanked his friends. He promised Mal and Ildu that he would never let anyone touch the mansion again. Contrary to his boiling anger, his mind was calm and unharmed. They were going to fight back with the people's tactics, also called city adventure strategy, which is only allowed for high-level characters. The character also asked Yield to show him the place he wanted to go to tomorrow. Yield wondered what kind of place he was talking about. The hero was referring to the Adventurers Guild.